My mic stand ain't cooperating. Hello? Here we are.
Yes.
We're here. We had to move my desk and stuff to get Christmas decor out of the attic, and so now I feel like all my stuff's
Really?
in very specific spots. Like when you have your car seat adjusted properly and exactly where you want it, and then someone else drives your car and changes it, and you can never get it exactly right to where it was before.
Yep. Yeah, they moved your mirror
Randy.
2 millimeters to the left.
But that 2 millimeters took forever to get dialed in exactly where you want it.
Yeah. 12 years just like that.
Yeah. Gone in the blink of an eye.
The blink of an eye. Oh, man. Can you believe it's December?
Dude, it's crazy, man. It's like November went by really fast. I don't know if it's just because, everything sort of gets a little more chaotic these last 2 months of the year, but yeah, it's
because we're adults, bro.
That might be it too.
We're grown-ups. It's freaking weird. I went to one of my best friends from high school. I still keep in touch with him. Yeah, he's one of the only guys I still talk to from high school, and he lives about 40 minutes north of me. And his oldest daughter had her sweet 16 on Saturday, so Anna Marie and I went to that, and it was at his house, and he has a really, really nice patio backyard. So they basically, the parents kind of crazy, we're grown-ups. The parents sat over on the side of the house where they had a little fire pit going on, and then all the kids were huddled around a makeshift dance floor, and they had makeshift club lights, very homey. And it was such a high school dance in there. It was hilarious. Everyone was around the perimeter of the dance floor. Two kids dancing. They only know the chorus to the songs. They have no idea who sung them. It's adorable. It's hilarious. But it was really it was a wake up call, man. I'm much farther away from high school than I thought I was. So
Yep. It's
good, man.
I mean, it's wild too, because when you have a kid and they go into school and you have the parent teacher conferences and the open house nights and stuff, it's I feel like it wasn't that long ago that I was in the same position she was. And it's crazy now. I see everything my parents saw, and now it all makes so much more sense.
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
The homework and not telling us about it, and then it's 8:00 on a Sunday. And she's like, yeah, I have to do this and this and this and this. And it's what? What?
Nice.
So,
oh, geez.
1 foot in the grave, buddy.
I know, right? The other on the banana peel. Well, I have a surprise for everyone who's watching.
Oh.
I received a special gift in the mail, and it brings me so much freaking joy.
Keller, you didn't graduate. You're not fooling anybody.
It brings me so much freaking joy that I had to wear it on tonight's show because I just got it. And now for everyone to see, just in case there was any confusion, here it is.
Oh. A hoodie with Team Hood.
My very own genuine Team Hood t-shirt, complete with Blackhead Python patterning to it.
No comment.
Love it. Jason Hood's the man. So, how you been?
Good.
Busy.
Work.
Same old.
Yep.
Aki's good.
Yep.
Excellent. Yeah, you and I spoke a little bit before this, and you were playing with Aki's, and I made the comment, hey, do you want to call me back when you're not I don't know if you were target training or feeding or cleaning or whatever.
You're giving me entirely too much credit there, buddy.
Well, and that's what I was going to say is that you really are working with them a lot, and I mean, I'm seeing the progress
lately. I've been pretty lacking. Just with all the sort of the medical stuff and whatnot, the last week or two, it's been much more. My attention's been diverted a little bit. But yeah, I was just like, I had time to kill after dinner, and you were gonna call, and so I was like, let me at least pull one of them or both of them out. And I at some point pulled both of them out. So
Yeah, but I'm watching your not little, but your Instagram reels, and dude, you can watch the progress, man.
after, especially sort of after they've had kind of a break, that initial like grabbing them, they're definitely not feeling it, but after a few minutes, they definitely mellow out some. I'm sure they're probably a little winded, and that plays a big factor in it. But
yeah, are you still chasing them around, or are you still coaxing them out with a prey item?
So most mornings, at least lately, I haven't had time to really do the tong feeding. It's still pretty much when they're under a rock chilling, going in there and grabbing them and
catch them off guard. Then
they kind of get their bearings, and then, like I said, they're fine. But it's that first minute or two that they're just like,
yeah.
So
that's cool. And everything's chilling appropriately.
I still have to move stuff into the garage. The temperatures have been really squirrely here. Once again, we had some consistent temperatures, and I was like, perfect. And then it was like, oh, wait, let's go back to like 70. Let's go back to 75. Then let's go back to 56. And just the ping-ponging. So maybe this weekend, I don't know. I got to look at the weather and see what's going on. But this is episode 145 of Snakes and Stogies.
Yes.
Which is brought to you by Puget Sound Pythons. Check them out, Facebook and Instagram. And BlackBoxCages.com. I know we talk about them a lot. There's a reason for that, because they make some awesome, awesome stuff.
Yep.
Aki's got a black box. They love it. Ganyasoma got a black box, and they love it.
Pseudocerastes got a black box that they're living in. It's not complete yet, but they're there.
Rhynchophis, not Ganyasoma. Are in a black box, and they like it. So,
well, Jen texted me today, and my 2-foots are ready.
Nice.
And just putting the finishing touches on them. So we're gonna do stackable, no heat panel, which I got to figure out how I want to do that. But she's just gonna put in the LED lighting and my fancy smancy locks that I love so much. So we'll have more desert creatures in no time. Very exciting stuff. BlackBoxCages.com. Yeah, I'm actually really excited about those. They're like the perfect size 2-foots. If you're keeping smaller vipers, or you're keeping a smaller colubrid, or something that you want a little bit of height for some climbing, but it's not really arboreal, that's the way to do it. And what are you smoking tonight, sir?
So there was a Liga Anniversario.
Nice.
On the shelf that someone had picked up and cracked. Not
really?
Me, but someone else. So Roger's like, if you want it also, do you have price? So
good.
Got me a $25 Liga for like $12 and change. So
hell yeah. That's the way to do it.
And it's not like, if it were like a really bad crack where like the wrapper was completely obliterated, I'd probably would have just been like, yeah, no thanks. But it's not that bad. It's workable. It'll get a little rough as I get closer to that little spot, but
yeah.
Stop going to a cigar shop. Don't touch the cigars in the humidor. You don't have to.
Yeah.
It's one of the most rudimentary things we're taught as children. Look, don't touch.
Yes.
Still applies as an adult.
And if you have to touch, if you have to pick it up, don't squeeze it. Don't squeeze it.
Roll it or hold it up to your ear like you're at the beach listening for the ocean and the shell.
Yeah, it's not a conch.
Or like, it's not whispering to you. It's not going to tell you anything about the flavor. And we've talked about it before. Just because it feels hard or it feels soft doesn't really have much to do with the actual humidity of the humidor.
Correct.
Some companies, like, this is pretty hard. Like, there's not a lot of give to it. That's just the way they're rolled.
Yeah.
Some companies roll their stuff with a lot of filler and stuff in it. Some companies roll it with a little less. Depends on if it's box pressed. If it's box pressed, there's not going to be as much filler in it, so it is going to be spongier. You can't just judge it by the feel. It's a bad indicator. It's a bad metric.
Bad habit. Yeah.
So.
Yep. And that being said, too, is if you pick up a cigar normal and you immediately feel sponginess to it, that means it's heavily overhydrated and probably not good. Probably
or
needs
it's
to
just
dry out.
a not great cigar that with a company that is like that's like maybe their budget line or something where they have their lower grade rollers making it, but like the Brick House, are fairly spongy. They have a lot of soft spots in them usually, but it's a pretty damn good cigar. That Connecticut. I mean, they're all good, but
well, speaking of Connecticut's, I wanted something light, and I pulled out. I forgot I had this. A 21-year-old, age 21 years, whatever you want to call it, Gurkha Cellar Reserve. So
that's that line that has that black label that I love so much.
Yeah. But I will say this, though. Either I need to change the Boveda pack that's in that one box, or this was just made shitty. It had a pigtail, and like a moron, I used a V cutter, and I guess the stem of the pigtail was tucked underneath the cap, so like it totally ripped the top out.
Yeah, it happens.
So life goes on.
But Brad's here. I feel like we haven't seen Brad in a minute.
We haven't. Yeah. What's up, buddy? Hila hot.
Jenkins is here. JT is here. Nate's here.
Yeah.
Eric, Westmoreland, Joe,
Trippy, and Keller.
All the
gang.
usual suspects.
Yes.
So was Paint Shep supposed to join us tonight? What was the?
I thought he was. Did we send him the link? I forgot.
I don't know.
I'll send him the link right now. I don't
know if he's even free.
Well, we'll send it anyway.
I don't know. We kind of suck at this.
You thought we would have had it together by now. Jeez.
Yeah. So this is the last Snakes and Stogies of the year.
Yes, it is.
Our last show of the year is the 12th. Me and Jake are gonna fit in a like one-on-one year in review on Thursday, and then Monday. So this time next week we'll be doing our sort of final show of 2022, naming our people of the year, all that good stuff. So what's happening, Jeff? That'll be good. I'm pretty excited about the people we've got picked. I need to talk to Bill still and get some other stuff sort of finalized and figured out. And I'm happy with all the picks we got.
Oh yeah, great picks.
I feel like we could add, we could easily pick like 4 or 5 people per show. Like it's hard to just narrow down one, but you struggling?
Yeah, I didn't fill it up before we started the show.
Oh.
Yep. Lit enough.
I know a lot of people seem to be gravitating more towards like the soft flame, like Bic lighters. So like I got this in a My Father sampler I bought like last weekend. It's came with a soft flame lighter. So
nice.
It's nice. It burns a lot cooler than torches do, so you don't, burn your tobacco.
Yeah.
Get a little more flavor out of it. It's just not as harsh on the wrapper and stuff, and you're not sort of charring it. But My Father makes good stuff. I have a Les Bijoux sort of lined up as my secondary.
Excellent.
So haven't had one of those in a while. That's one that I kind of am on the fence about. Like I've had some that were really, really good, and then I've had a couple that were really not, and they seem pretty hit or miss. It seems like that's kind of the case with a lot of My Father stuff, especially like the Jaime Garcias, which I love. Like a really good box of Jaime Garcias, like those things are really, really, really good. But a really bad batch of Jaime Garcias, they are rough. Like they are just taste off. So, there's Bert.
Hey, there he is, the
Podfather.
Podfather. The Podfather. Well, I actually
What's up, Christian?
I gave my Fuscus the last meal before I cool them. I'm just waiting for them to drop that turd. And I got so excited, man, because I saw my girl, her back end was so huge. And I was like, yes, this is going to be the turd that I get to turn everything off and start the chilling process. And I realized that it wasn't, is that she was doubled up over herself. And that's just how fat she is. And I was like, oh my God, this is glorious. So I'm hoping that they expend their waste in the next couple days so I can get them going and then start chilling geckos. So
Yeah, I was waiting on the female suboc to shed, and she did, and I just haven't gotten around to actually putting her in the closet with everything else for that prelim cooling, which has pretty much dropped them down into like the mid to upper 60s, maybe a little cooler in the coolest nights we have right now.
yeah,
But I feel like it's a nice kind of drop from what they're usually at, and then get them into like cooling. As soon as that weather decides to show up and stick around. So
yeah, man.
I gotta box her up and move her. But
Yeah, it got like 71 last night, and I was like, oh, it's starting. And I was like, no, it was like 88 today. I'm like, ugh.
it was like a high 65 here. It's been cooling off pretty good, but it's just we have like a nice 4-day streak of like legit colder weather, and we have one day of like 69, or 70, and then we'll have another day it's cold, and then it kind of jumps back up. It's just been super inconsistent.
Yeah.
And of course, Jake's bragging of, well, that's why I'm waiting until January to put mine down, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Put his down. That's another good one. See?
So that's the perfect segue. Tonight, we're going to kind of talk about some slang. Let me write it down.
Yep. Well, we also have our games of chance.
We do. We want to go ahead and get that knocked out?
Yeah, let's do that, man.
Okay, so forewarning, Phil picked out this week's quizzes, and I apologize in advance because I don't know what the hell these are.
Look, man, I wanted to make it challenging, but not. I didn't go crazy.
Species people actually kind of know.
I know, but the problem is if I pick things too easy, then Keller's just going to get every single one.
Well, Keller can be barred. We can bar Keller to only win once a month.
Okay, all right. Maybe we'll do that.
Oh, there we go. Jeff said he wants to know what perps. Oh,
yes,
boy,
that's
Jeff
good.
wants to know what perps are.
Yep.
Oh, perps.
Yeah, the perps.
It's a good one. See, there's a ton.
Down?
There's a ton. Yeah, but I mean, there's a ton there as well. Just in like the species that have the sort of the short form names.
Yeah.
I'm not participating so other people can get a chance to win. What a guy.
Keller, you just text me your answers and I'll tell you if you were right or not. Well, we got some people getting in. It is not a shovel-nosed snake or long-nosed snake. Good guesses, boys.
They're on the wrong continent. Let's start there.
Yeah, that's true. And
no one's gonna get this.
You'd be surprised, man. It's not a banded crate.
When I saw it, I was like, "What the hell? What?" You would pick something like this.
I know.
What I said when I saw it, I was like, "This is something Phil would pick."
So there's actually another one that it's a species of snake that I think is from the United States, but it was on Flickr, and the person that took the picture called it a Tetris snake. And I tried Googling Tetris snake, and all I get is like
Tetris or Tetris.
I think Tetris, like the game.
Oh.
And then when I Googled Tetris snake, all I got was new console game, Tetris and Snake combined. It's like
that sounds horrible.
Yeah. So
Tetris just gives me anxiety.
It is not a flat-nosed snake. It is not a coral snake, nor a spitter, Lisa.
At least give them a continent.
It is on the African continent.
It's not a bush viper, I can tell you that.
Yeah, and to be honest, if if somebody gets the genus, we'll take the genus, because this particular species actually has 5 subspecies, which I didn't know until I started Googling. And I don't even know which subspecies this one is.
I'm only good at guessing random numbers. You do have a talent for that.
Yes, he does.
Yeah. See, I told you, man. I think I've heard of these maybe once, and I think it was because you mentioned them. Other than that, it's one of those species that you're likely to never know exists.
Well, I was going to say is the only other person I know who has an affinity for them besides me is Matt Most, and Matt Most actually used to keep them. I've never kept them. And no, not Telescopus. Good try, boys. I mean, what do you want to do? Do you want to just
let's move on.
All right, we'll move on.
Okay, number 2.
I thought this was a really good one.
I thought the fox snake one was a really good one too, and that turned out to be a dud. What is it? What could it be?
And see, I like this photo too because it's on sand, and you wouldn't expect it necessarily to be on sand. Yep, and there it is.
Yep.
Joe
got it.
The eastern hognose.
Told you.
I thought it was a good one, man.
And this is another one I'm only familiar with by genus because you trash talk another genre in lieu of this. So
I thought
this one will be tough.
Change it up.
This one is going to be a zig when you should have zag kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for all the... I know where people are going to go with this, and I'm waiting for it because I'm not going to say it, but
yeah,
I think you did that on purpose too.
Yeah. And the other thing too is it's a variable species, but it's not that variable. You know what I mean? So if someone is into this type of critter, then they should be able to get it pretty easily.
Again, as every episode that we're doing this, if you're listening to this, we apologize.
Yes.
I'll paint you a picture to the best of my abilities. It's a legged creature with studded sort of skin and maybe some slight banding. And it has an armpit. Looks a little dry. Like maybe it needs some sort of lotion or deodorant or something.
An intricate array of beaded rosettes.
There we go. Okay. Way to church it up there, Wolf.
Complemented with granite bands of ochre.
What?
Granite bands of ochre. It is not Pachydactylus. It is not Coleonyx. It is not a
Eublepharid.
Yeah, not that. I was gonna do like it on Kasiki. I was going to, and I was like, eh. This too is also African, if that helps.
This too is also really hard.
I mean, people just got to diversify what they're looking at on the internet, on the interwebs.
Yeah, just Google obscure species that are only known to science by like one holotype. And we're good to go.
No, I did not do that. I literally did not do that. I just typed in gecko, and this came up, and I was like, "Ooh, I love those. Let's do that."
Chris he's throwing them out there, man.
He is. He's pitching hard.
It's not Nephurus, which is where I thought everyone would go first because it's Phil.
Yep.
I was like, but you guys have to know that would be way too obvious.
Yes. And anyone who really knows me, I can confidently say it's my second favorite genus of gecko.
Leopard geckos.
Nah, that'd be too easy.
Okay.
All right, you want to go back to the first one, or?
Yeah, thank you, Anna Maria. That's what I said.
Oh my God, there she is.
Did he say that as he was picking these? I feel like he did.
No, that's not the case at all.
It's not a strophe.
Fiance throwing me under the bus.
How's it feel under there?
Cold and damp.
All right, let me pull up the answers. Why don't you give us something people got a God's honest chance of getting at?
No, Jeff, not fan-footed.
You guys like all my plywood?
Beautiful. Hey, there it is. The first one.
Weird. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of that snake. No one?
We can't see their hands, Smitty.
It's because no one's raising them.
Yeah, so
Good Lord.
for those of you who are unaware,
Which is a lot of us. Which is like 99.9% of people that are watching this right now.
So the first species was Elapsodiae sundevili, which is Sun Devil's garter snake. Sun Devil was a
Sure, it's not pronounced
Swedish.
Sundeval,
No, I think it's Sundev.
like Cruella de Vil.
No, well, the guy was. I'm pretty sure the guy was Swedish. Anyway, it's of the Elapsoidae, which is African garter snakes, which are not related to our garter snakes in North America. These are actually elapids, and they're semi-fossorial.
Thank you,
and
Nate.
most of them have these bands to them. And
Nate raised his hand.
oh, thank you, Nate. Thank you. And they're semi-fossorial, and they're found throughout southern Africa, and they're very misunderstood. But they're incredibly beautiful. Great sunset colors, black and white like a cow king, heavy bands, light bands, broad bands, a wide assortment of
Honestly,
yeah.
it looks like the Wish version of a kukri.
That is the meanest thing you've ever said on air. No offense, Travis Wyman.
I was just I bet your Wyman's getting excited. I said kukri.
No offense, Travis Wyman. This smokes it.
It reminds me of like if a kukri and a scarlet snake had a baby, but then there was like a weird paternity uncertainty with like maybe a coral cobra and a long-nosed snake. Like no one's really sure who the dad is.
It's a Jerry Springer of African Elapids.
It is a Jerry Springer of African Elapids.
Yeah. And for those of you who are listening to this, it's a...
You took the Wikipedia picture?
I did. I had to. It was a really good picture.
That's probably the only picture that exists. That's probably...
No. That's the only picture I could find with this like coloration. So yeah, most of these are black and brown banded. They have a very long nape stripe that comes down the bridge of their nose. They're just a cool snake.
The head looks like the kind like that's what a kid would draw. If you said, draw me a snake right now, that's what you'd get.
Yeah, it has a very ominous head. And they have an iridescence to them, kind of like a rainbow boa. But they're smooth scaled and they're fairly venomous. So
really?
Oh yeah. They're elapids.
No, it's Elapsoidea. Elapsoidea? Is it Elapsoidea or Elapsoidea?
It's Elapsoidae.
Looks like Eddie Munster.
It does. It does look like Eddie Munster. Or Danzig.
Yeah. Ominous Head is my new band.
Nice.
Okay, this was the one that I like how you give Virginia State Parks credit here. That's a nice touch.
It's because I couldn't get the Wikipedia one was there's no person tied to it. And then this one, it was on the Virginia State Parks like page and it didn't have a photographer. So I was like, all right, Virginia State Parks, they get the credit.
What's wild is that one's so like yellowish tan, it almost looks like a Southern.
And to be honest, at first I thought it was a Southern, and then I saw Virginia, and I was like, "What? Say what?"
Ton of variation in Easterns. That's why they're so cool. Hypers here.
Hey, the Yipers.
The Pied Hyper.
Man, Anna Maria's dishing it out tonight.
She's
Jesus.
boy, she's on a roll.
Yeah, she's out for blood.
Heterodon platyrinos.
A good Latin name.
Mm.
I like it. It rolls off the tongue. Platyrinos.
And then, hey, the other lizard that nobody.
The only true chondro.
Yeah.
Chondrodactylus angulifer, the Namib giant ground gecko.
How come you guys didn't know that? How come you guys couldn't guess that?
Look,
unbelievable.
Gecko people should know that. I was actually thinking someone was going to guess frog-eyed or fish-eyed. I thought people were going to go that way.
You weren't here, Scott.
He was lurking.
Can't say that after the fact.
Yeah. And honestly, this is an exceptional looking angulifer. It they don't normally have that high orange and that high ochre brown. Normally they're more like a slatey gray color, but they're super cool.
So not only did he pick a species that no one's going to know what it was, he also picked a very like abnormal color form that would be completely different from what
Okay. But dude, last week you picked the neonate form that is a completely different color, completely different pattern. The Nitzii.
Yeah, but that was like I tried to do it in like levels where it's like easy, intermediate.
Okay, well, if more gecko people were here, they would have got it.
Expert.
Oh, come on.
Like, super easy, expert.
Jesus. And to be brutally honest, I thought the hognose was hard because it was an Eastern and not a Southern.
Yep, just like the fox snake.
Yep, just like the fox snake.
I was like, no one's gonna get this. I was dead wrong.
Yep.
All right, so Joe, I'll hit you up. Jeff, I'll hit you up too because I think they pretty much answered at the same time. So have some mercy because no one got the other two. So.
And Paint Shop texts me back. He says he is apologizing. He cannot be here. He's actually got called into work.
Boo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever. All good. He's a busy man. He gets a pass.
Anna Maria says, Phil set us all up to fail. I love you too, honey.
Slang. I feel
slang.
So could have had Iper. Iper could have added a ton of stuff to this because Australians
have
like an entire other language when it comes to this stuff.
Very true.
I mean, they have an entire other language when it comes to like general English too, but Keller said he'd fill in for him.
All right. So you want to give people an idea of what this is about?
Did you see that?
What?
Keller said he'd fill in for Chris.
Oh, well then, yeah, if you want. Send him the link. Let's do it. Sorry, I'm like trying to multitask and doing a horrible job of it.
Keller's probably lying. He's like, oh, I'm not going to do that shit. Yeah, so explain while I do.
So, all right. So a couple weeks ago, actually, when Anna Maria and I were on our trip to the Carolinas, we were talking about podcasts and shows and whatever else. And, we were talking about ideas for shows. And, she had brought up a great idea of having a discussion or an episode on herper slang. A lot of words that we all use in common practice, or most of our community use in common practice, that a new person or someone who's not as engulfed in it as we are may not understand or may not know, or maybe they heard them. Like who had said perp earlier?
Jeff Frederick.
Oh, okay. So yeah. So Jeff brought up perp. So not to jump ahead, but when we say perp, we mean Purpura maculatus, which is the shore pit viper from Southeast Asia. So it's actually in the Trimersurus genus, excuse me. And Trimersurus Purpura maculatus comes from the south of Thailand into Malaysia and Singapore, and then into northeast or northwestern Sumatra. So like the Straits of Malacca, that whole way into the Indian Ocean, that all that area, they're a mangrove species of pit viper. They come in several different color forms and different saddles and stuff, but when we say perp, we're talking about Purpua maculatus.
Basically, if you take the ghost chick from The Grudge and put her in snake form,
Yes,
that's kind of what you get.
that's exactly what you get.
Herper bastardized terminology. That's a separate section.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing. So going back to what Anna Marie and I were talking about. So we were driving through the Blue Ridge Mountains, and she'd said, well, you guys always talk about a cut, like herping the cut. What's a cut? And I was like, we're coming up on this big rock wall. You see this giant rock wall? She's like, yeah. I said, that's a cut. Basically, instead of someone making a bridge to go over a mountain or over a foothill, or through a valley, they dynamite it and they just blow their way through. It makes a rock wall. Well, in places like West Texas, those rock walls are relatively short, and you can walk along them or climb up on top of them. And the snakes and lizards, the snakes and lizards are active on those rock walls. And in a place like West Texas, it's all private land. So the only place that you really can herp is on the side of the road. So that's where,
I mean, you can herp anywhere. It's just
yeah,
you get shot or not.
So Smitty and I had basically broke down a list. I had my list, he had his list. We kind of blended them together. I talked to Nipper, got some ideas, talked to Papa Burke, the Podfather. He gave us some ideas. So basically we're going to do some herping terms, some like field stuff. And then we have some husbandry stuff. And then we have some general snake stuff. And then obviously for all of you that are in the group chat right now, it's all live. If you have a word that we haven't covered or that we didn't cover, or that you want to know if we are, throw it up in there and we'll try and get to it, And again, this is not for the herping veterans. This is not necessarily for the longtime keepers. A lot of this stuff, most of you have probably heard. This is for people that are just getting into it, or honestly never took the time to ask or Google it, which is fair to say a lot of us. So
that actually makes sense. You said road cuts are great places to find fossils.
Oh yeah.
I feel like that's almost cheating. It's like, yeah, we got, just thousands upon thousands of years of rock. Let's just cut right through the middle of it. Just look.
Yeah, I think about how many fossils were destroyed when they did it. Oof.
Yep. So we're starting with herping stuff.
Yeah. You wanna kick the tires, light the fires?
Yeah. We have to use it in a sentence as well.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. We have to use it in a sentence.
So what's the first one?
Well, actually, Scott put a good thing. It says technically, a cut is a geotechnical term, is restricted to cutting away with a grater. I did not know that. That's actually really cool. The use of explosives and drilling is excavation. You learn something new every day. Love it.
Yeah,
and I wonder that's obviously not the same grader that they do on like a conventional graded road, because I feel like you'd need a much bigger or more powerful grader to do like some of the cuts in West Texas.
It's like God came down and cut through that mountain with a Ginsu knife.
Yeah, right. So one of the biggest things we always talk about with herping is road cruising. And I think road cruising can be a lot of different things to a lot of different herpers. Anna Marie and I got in an argument in the car about like, is road cruising a made up term by herpers? It's like, no, we Googled it. It's not. And basically road cruising's definition is getting in the car or truck or vehicle and just driving to drive, like just going for a cruise. Right. But we're doing
context of herping. So I'll use it in a sentence.
Yes. Feel free.
Hey man, my girlfriend just kicked me out of the house. Do you want to go road cruising?
Nice. That was good. So when we talk about road cruising, it's a bunch of friends get in the car and you're driving down a road, whether it be paved or improved or dirt or whatever, and you're looking for animals crossing the road or on the side of the road. Some people will drive to an area, they'll like do a lap of one road and then get out and walk the sides, walk the shoulders of the road. Some people will really just drive up and down the same road over and over again. It depends on where you are. It depends on the time of day. It depends on what kind of animals you're looking for. And road cruising can be a lot of fun if you've got friends in the car, the camaraderie, the laughs, the jokes, all that stuff. It can also be really boring because you're driving around aimlessly. Well, I mean, not aimlessly, but you're driving around looking at nothing, staring at the road for hours on end. A lot of Europeans and non-Americans usually poo-poo it and frown upon it because they're like, oh, that's not real herping. You know, a lot of people even consider it cheating because
Well, this is the land of ingenuity. This is the land of McDonald's and Walmart.
Yeah, right.
We work smarter, not harder around here.
Yeah. Scott says they call it night driving in Australia. So, and yeah, and I mean, and that's basically it. Is you're going out at the right time of day, looking for the right species, and you're just driving on the road. And Anna Maria says,
compound sentence right there.
Yeah, read it.
Let's go road cruising and then stop and herp the cuts.
God, I love you, babe.
Mom went to bingo and locked me out of the house. Do you want to go road cruise some corals?
Scott says, yank herping. Very, very true.
Whatever.
Yeah, I'll take it, man. Hey, the only
they don't do it because they can't do it without hitting a damn kangaroo.
I mean, those things will fight you.
I want to fight one still.
There you go. So another term, the worst part about road cruising is DORs. What's a DOR? A DOR, sadly to say, is dead on road, which means that the animal was hit by a car or vehicle. It's now dead, which is sad, but it can also be somewhat helpful because A, you know you're in the right spot, and B, if you're doing any kind of research, now you know the time of day, you can kind of get an idea of when it was hit and what is kind of in the area. I also want to, jumping on that whole DOR thing, I kind of want to stay away from acronyms tonight. We're gonna talk about a couple acronyms just because they are so common. But there's so many acronyms pertaining to so many things that we're gonna kind of leave that out tonight, guys.
Bill said yank herping sounds inappropriate.
It does, Bill. Dirty boy.
Those Australians are some sick bastards, man.
Yes, they are. God bless them. So yeah, so that's road cruising, basically driving up and down the road looking for animals. Another one is flipping tin. So the term to flip tin comes from herpers leaving pieces of sheet metal, typically tin or aluminum or whatever, on the side of the road as a happy hiding place for snakes. So the tin gets warm from the sun. It provides shade. It provides warmth. It provides, safety from the elements. The herpers go over, they flip the tin over, whether it be with a hook or their hands or whatever, and hope to find a reptile or amphibian underneath that piece of tin. A lot of people use plywood, and a lot of people also use sheets of carpeting, old carpeting. So if you ever hear people talk about flipping tin, that's what that means.
And in the context of a sentence, so I was over at that meth head shack flipping some tin, and I found a really nice scarlet king snake.
Well done, old man. Well done. Yeah, and Billy Jenkins says you could shorten it to flipping. Hey, let's go flipping.
Old man Weatherby shot at me with his BB gun because I was in his backyard flipping tin.
That's a very American statement.
In situ.
In situ, yes. In situ is another great one. In situ means in its natural environment, where it was undisturbed, unmolested, exactly
as it was found.
As it was found. And there's also ex situ, which is not in its natural state. So going back to, I have on my list, herping the cut. Okay, glades. So typically a glade is a open, flat area of grassland. Sometimes it's underwater. Sometimes it's a grassy field within the lowland area. When I talk about it, we're talking about the Everglades. However, a lot of people in Florida, especially herpers, They say, oh, we're going to the Everglades or we're going to the Glades. That does not mean Everglades proper. So the Everglades in Florida is actually a massive, massive wetland system that goes from the Kissimmee River Valley just south of Orlando all the way down to the very bottom tip of Florida. Now, there is a national park called Everglades National Park, and it is massive. And it's the bottom of Florida, right at the tip, right before the Keys. However, most people that say, oh, we're herping the Glades, they're not talking about Everglades National Park, because you really can't go herping in Everglades National Park because everything's protected and you can't touch anything. People do it. People do photography. They do hiking and all that stuff. And that's great. But most of the time when we talk about the Glades, we're talking about any kind of wetland ecosystem that typically inhabits sawgrass. Sawgrass is a grass that grows in water in wetland areas, and the blades of the grass are super duper sharp and jagged like a saw.
Yeah.
And if you're careful,
that stuff down here too. It sucks.
Yeah, you will get cut real easy if you mess with sawgrass. So
it's like paper cuts. Like you have to hit it at like just the right angle.
Yeah.
But when you do, you feel it. You know it.
Yes. Another locality thing would be the playa. So La Playa is, the beach in Spanish, but a playa is typically a flat, low elevation water pond that's very thin and oftentimes dries out at certain times of the year. A lot of wetland grasses will grow in it, but it's not necessarily a wetland. A lot of bird hunters, migratory bird hunters and bird watchers will go to these playas and look for different crane species and stork species because so many migratory shorebirds will go there. And it's a great place to find certain amphibians and certain reptiles at certain times of the year.
Speaking of, I'm never calling a salamander again. They will forever be gummy lizards.
Gummy lizards. That's good. I saw it the other day. That was good. So going on the same thing with playas, yeah, you also get and now I messed up my list here. Hold on a second. Flag ponds. So a flag pond is basically a playa. It's basically a lowland, very shallow wetland, but it gets this particular type of grass, and there's multiple species of this grass that grows in these little wet spots, these little wet patches, and they look like little flags. And in the wind, they will wave. This is typically not so water-based as it is mud and silt and clay-based. So it's very, very muddy, very, very gooey, like sandpiper habitat, and a lot of species of snake like garter snakes and cottonmouths and a lot of more heavily aquatic stuff, Neurodia. They'll inhabit these flag ponds. And the flag ponds are usually a runoff system or like a drainage system for some of the other higher elevation waterways that will typically dry up. So when those higher elevation wetlands dry up, these flag ponds will still stay fairly moist to keep some of those amphibians and shorebirds and stuff going. And yeah, very, very similar to a bog. So.
Vamos a la playa.
Was that let's go to the beach?
We go to the beach, yeah.
We go to the beach, yeah. Coinciding with that, you also, in the southeastern United States, you get what's called a cypress head. Now, cypress trees need a lot of water. And what happens is these trees bundle together and they keep shade, and they basically make their own little island forest. And that island forest will typically have excess water at the bottom. And a lot of herpers will meander their way through these little island forests, these little cypress heads, to go looking for certain rat snake species and king snake species, and a lot of frogs and amphibians that need to stay humid throughout the year. They'll go and seek shelter and refuge in these little, I don't want to say little, they're probably like 10 or 15 acres each, little micro forests that are still wet at the bottom. Now, a lot of people confuse a cypress head with a palmetto head. A palmetto head is the exact same thing, but now it's high elevation, sandy soil with saw palmetto, which is a type of bush. And I mean, Justin lives in the Palmetto State. I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, boy, when those palmettos when they get thick, it's pretty crazy.
It's crazy.
Again, those are also sort of like sharp leaved, spiny stemmed. Just you see them, and there's really no wonder why eastern diamondbacks typically are found in them, because it's great cover for things like rabbits and things like that they would normally eat, because birds of prey probably are less likely to see things scurrying about in those big areas of palms, because they don't get super tall. They're not super low to the ground either. I think most of them would be about
5 foot.
Yeah, like waist to chest height for me. I'm like 6'4", like tallest ones being like probably close to chest or shoulder height. But I mean, you get a big mass of those things in an area, like you can't see anything in there.
Oh yeah.
It makes sense why they'd be such good cover for so many different species, both reptilian and not. And yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, I see them and I'm so tempted to go like walking through them and seeing what turns up, because nothing ever that I can imagine, except for maybe deer, like is going to go in there and disturb things. But it's also pretty it's thick. So
oh yeah,
I don't know.
I
don't know what the point would be almost, because you'd be hard pressed to be able to see what's going on, from the waist down. So
yeah, I know a lot of herpers in North Florida and Georgia. They'll walk the roads, the back roads, the dirt roads that go through all the palmetto heads. And then as they're doing that, depending on what time of day it is, the sun has cast shadows shielding one side of the palmetto head, and they'll walk the shade side. And by the time they get all the way around it, the sun's moved a little bit or a lot, depending on how far away they are. And then they'll walk back the other side, so they get shade both times. Not shade on them, shade on the animals.
Right.
And hope that you'll be able to see, a pine snake or a diamondback or a pygmy, chilling in the shade.
Yeah, I mean, we're not talking about like a couple of like a clump of some bushes. I mean, we're talking about like when you have some of these palmetto heads, it is like almost it's acres in some instances, like especially like Hunting Island State Park, which is the state park I like to go to a lot, and walk the trails there. Like there are some sections where it's just like that's all you see for a couple hundred yards. It's just crazy. It's just a sea of palmettos, and it's pretty neat. It's cool habitat.
Yeah, very very cool habitat. Even if like I love going, because like even if you don't see anything, it's just super cool. It's so
something out of Jurassic Park.
It very very prehistoric. Yeah. So now Nipper actually came up with this one. We all know what a snake hook is. We all have certain snake hooks that do certain tasks. You have a baby snake hook for baby snakes. You have a longer snake hook, for longer snakes, keep your distance, what have you. And then you'll also hear us use the term field hook, or as Nipper would put it, a stump ripper. So a field hook is a snake hook that is made like industrial strength. Okay. It's usually stainless steel. It usually has some kind of, carbon steel, carbide head to it. And it's typically in an L shape, not a U. And the field hook is used for lifting pieces like giant pieces of tin or plywood, or ripping apart a stump. So if you find an old rotten log, I can take my field hook or stump ripper, and I can stab it with that field hook, that stump ripper, and rip that log open, see if there's anything inside the rotten log, or simply just roll over a rotten log, or roll over, pieces of debris or rubbish or what have you. So anytime
they're worth every penny.
They're worth every penny.
I love mine.
And it takes some getting used to with the L shape, because there's no actual like belly to the hook. It's just a 90-degree angle typically, or maybe like an 82-degree angle. So it does take some getting used to in terms of actually using it on a snake. However, when Smitty and I are in the field, like, yeah, I always have a normal U-shaped hook with me, but that's the hook. If we're going hiking, that's the hook. I can use it as a walking stick. I can use it to, balance myself if I got to grab something that's far away, or use it for its intended purpose, ripping open stumps. It's worth its weight in gold.
And they are destructive if you're using them like a moron.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Scott makes a great point. You know, they are destructive. If you're going to a place that is frequented by nature lovers, herpers, birders, hikers, mountain bikers, and there's this classic log that's always there, don't destroy it with your field hook. Use the field hook to flip it over. You don't see anything, put it back exactly the way it was, so that the animals that do live underneath it can continue to live underneath it, and that the people that are enjoying the same area that you're enjoying, it's undisturbed and not, you know, ruined for the next.
But I mean, as far as like for flipping tin though, I like those more than just a standard like U-hook.
Yeah,
by a long shot, because I don't know, for some reason when I'm using a U-hook and I'm trying to like pull some tin up or flip it, it just doesn't get the same. You don't have that hard angle that really gets
right.
that tin edge and pulls it. So I don't know. I like that L-shaped hook more in general. I don't know about you, but there's just something about that. I like that simpler just angle, and I almost prefer that more over the U-hooks. So
yeah.
And I wish they made smaller versions of the field hook. Like if I get that neonate hook in an L hook, I would love it.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. So let me get back to my list. Torch flashing and eye shining. So anybody who's ever heard of a deer in the headlights, obviously we know that certain animals' eyes reflect with light and they shine back at you. So in Europe, it's referred to as torch flashing because they don't call it a flashlight. They call it a torch, same as the boys and girls down under. So, and that's the other thing too, is spotlighting can be very different. So when you're torch flashing or eye shining, you typically have the light very close to your face or on your head. And the idea is that the light is being cast in the same direction at the same angle as your eyes. So that way, when you actually see the reflection of the animal's eyes, it's directly in front of you. And as Scott has mentioned before in other podcasts, you can actually just keep walking straight and you'll end up at your animal. At the same time, it's kind of inhumane because certain species, you're blinding them temporarily because all they see is this bright light. They have no idea what's going on. Hence the famous quote, like a deer in the headlights. Now, in my opinion, spotlighting is very different. Spotlighting is when you have a extremely powerful flashlight or torch and you're driving or walking through an area and you're shining this light out into the open area in the hopes of finding an animal that way. Yeah, you may get some eye shine, but this is more so that you can catch the broad side of an animal and that way you can identify it easier. This would be more for, say, bigger game like mammals or large birds or alligators or whatever.
Florida Panthers.
Yeah.
Boy, if I saw that and I was out herping in the middle of the night, I would piss myself.
I've been lucky. I've seen a lot of them, man. And it's nowhere near as scary as you think, but it's still, you still get the hairs in your neck, man.
After that black bear at Big Ben, I was kind of like, I like them behind the glass a little more.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was it for my herping terms that I came up with. Is there anything else that you might have for herping terms?
No.
Okay.
Most of the stuff I had was in relation to captivity.
All right. Well, then you want to kick off some husbandry stuff?
So first one I have, and it's not necessarily husbandry stuff. I guess it's more general, but like hots. So I feel like that's something that is almost exclusively used. That's a term used in U.S. herpetoculture.
Yes.
I know a lot of like the European folks and probably some of the Australians, if not a good bit of them, kind of scoff at it in a sort of a joking manner because it's just I've seen people comment about it on various posts and stuff over the years, and it's the European guys are always like, I don't know why they call them hots, ha ha ha, you know.
Yes, Scott hates that term.
Yeah, and I mean I get it. It's a little, I don't know what the word is for it, but I get it. I understand.
It's slang.
It's slang. But
yeah, and to be honest, I typically use the term venomous just because most people, unless they're in like the venomous community, they don't know the term HOTS,
Right.
you know, which, so that was actually a great word for this episode, you know.
I'm actually curious where it started. Like when did it pop up?
Well, the first time I ever heard it was the second annual issue of Reptile's Venomous Exclusive magazine. So the first year that Reptiles magazine put out a Venomous only issue, it was just called like the Venomous only issue or Venom annual Venomous issue or whatever they called it. And then the next year it was called the annual HOTS issue or hot issue. And it had like the word hot like
Yeah.
was on it. I'm pretty sure, I don't know if it was an
One with the
albino
monocle. Yeah, it was an
the
albino
albino
monocle. It was
yeah.
the H, the monocle, and
Yes,
the
yes. So that was the first time. I mean, I was a kid. I don't know how long ago was that. Jesus,
that was like early 2000s.
well, I thought it was earlier than that. I thought it was like late 90s, maybe.
It would have been like early 2000s.
Okay, like 2000, 2001, something like that.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Yeah. So that was the first time I ever heard it. And it stuck, especially in a lot of American venomous keeping. You know, there was also, wasn't there a show called the HOTS Show, and there were, I think it was in Carolina, in South Carolina.
Yeah,
I think it was
the Fire Expo, maybe.
Well, no, because there was a fire show in Orlando that I'm pretty sure was a venomous show, but it had nothing to do with fire. Like that was just the name of the show. And I think somebody else, another, you know, show promoter, rode that coattail and said, "Oh, well, they're the fire. We'll be the hot." You know, I don't know. Could be mistaken.
I don't know a decent venomous keeper that uses the term hot.
Yeah, I could say that too. But there, and then Scott also says a lot of non-venomous keepers refer to venomous keepers as hot keepers. So,
I mean, they could just be attractive. Who knows?
Hey.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, I kind of understand why there's, you know, it's kind of like gets an eye roll, but it's slang.
Yeah.
That's it. So another one I have is popped. Some of these I feel are like painfully obvious.
Yeah, but they're not though. They're really not. That's a great one. Tell us about popped. Tell us how you got popped.
I'm amazing, Smitty, but that's besides the point. Oh man, Modest too. Oof. Double threat. So when you're sexing baby snakes, you know, trying to figure out if it's a male or female, most of the time you can pop them, which is if it's a male, when you apply some pressure past the vent on the tail, sort of
what's the vent
forward, cloaca.
There you go.
See, this is what I'm talking about. Like, Phil's like, make a list. And I'm like, I couldn't think of any. Yeah. But I know in like normal conversation, I'd have like 20 of them pop up that I didn't think of.
Yeah.
So,
the vent is the cloaca. If you don't know what a cloaca is, you should Google it. But go on. Sorry.
So when you put your finger past the vent, and there is a certain way to do it, it's not as easy as I kind of make it sound. But if you roll your thumb sort of towards the vent, if it's a male, hemipenes pop out. Most of the time, if they don't, then it's likely a female. So usually you'll see someone will be saying, you know, oh, I have this corn for sale at pop male,
right,
or pop female.
I'll also say this as well, is that no one should try to pop their snake without having an experienced person show them first, because there is a high probability that you will damage or you will severely maim, if not severely injure, damage, whatever, that snake.
Yes.
So there is a technique to it, and it should be shown to you by an experienced person.
On the topic of like sexing, there's ratios. So JT mentioned earlier that a lot of people ask him about the 1.0.0 or 0.2.1. So basically you have the first 0, which is unknown, second 0 is male, third 0 is female. So if you have 1.0.0, you have one unknown sex on that snake. If you have 1.2, then you have a trio, which is 1 male, 2 females. And then reverse trio, which is the opposite. You have 2 males and 1 female. And so if you're see a group of snakes for sale, whether it's a pair or something else, usually it says 1.1 or 2.1 or, it makes things a lot easier. And I don't know who came up with that system too, but it's kind of perfect in a way. It's like,
it is
simple, easy to understand.
Yeah. Just for people's edification, when we're talking about this point value system, there's essentially 3 spots for digits, okay? And it goes from left to right. So if I have 1.1.1, the first one is male, the second one is female, and the third one is unknown. So if I have 1.2.1, that's 1 male, again from left to right, 1 male, 2 female, 1 unknown. Always left to right.
Is the unknown one at the very end?
Unknown one's at the end. It's male first, then female, then unknown.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was using the metric system.
Yeah. Wrong side of the road. So yeah, three digits with decimal points in between them. First position is male, second position is female, third position is unknown. So 1.1.1 is 1 male, 1 female, 1 unknown.
1 unsexed.
1 unsexed, yes. Undetermined sex.
Yep. What do you have?
So
I have some other stuff, but I figured.
Yeah. Well, we can go back and forth. So I'm going to flip flop around a little bit, but since we're talking about, sex determining babies, we always use the term neo. What is a neo? Neo stands for neonate, right? Much like you'd hear neonatal in infants. This can also be a hatchie or a freshie, as they say in Europe. So freshly hatched, right? Hatchie, freshie. But when we refer to neo, we're talking about a newborn snake or a newly hatched snake.
But I feel like you really only see that terminology with a lot of the chondro crowd in particular. Like I don't see it used with corns and other sort of sections of the hobby a lot.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times you just say baby.
Yeah, I don't know. I use neo a lot just because it's like short form, form. Whether I'm talking about corns or anything else, I'm like, they're neos, like just because they're hatchlings, or when you're typing or something, it's just neo.
So, speaking of baby snakes, I have a list of feeding terms that a lot of us take for granted. The first one is drop feeding. What is drop feeding? Drop feeding is when I take a prey item, whether it be alive or dead, and I literally drop it in the cage, close the enclosure, and walk away. And now
I was surprised to hear, like Loafman said recently on one of the podcasts, and he hadn't heard that term until I think Jake and I had mentioned it, like it had been talking about it on one episode.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I'm saying that we came up with it or anything like that.
No,
yeah. Drop feeding, used it a lot for all kinds of stuff.
And again, it could be a live prey item, it could be a frozen thawed. It doesn't matter what it is, but it's the act of the keeper literally dropping the prey item in the enclosure and then leaving alone and not interacting with the animal or the prey item at all. Best case scenario, the newborn or the baby or the new acquisition animal just eats it on its own. And a lot of people like myself and Smitty, we try that first because you may very well get lucky right out of the gate,
I think it's perfect because it's non-invasive in a sense. Especially if I have something that's a really nervous eater, I like it because I'm not in there. I'm not finding it under the hide. I'm not digging for it. Like I'm literally letting it figure it out, find it on its own. It's very,
you're not causing
non-invasive.
Stress.
I'm not interacting with that animal. It smells food, says, oh, there's food nearby. It starts cruising around, finds it, eats it. And I didn't have to do anything to
Yeah, stress it out.
Expedite that.
So a lot of times too, you'll
Passive
notice
feeding is another Scott said.
passive feeding. That's a good one. A lot of times you'll notice that the specimen at hand is interested in that dropped food item, but it didn't want it. It maybe you used a frozen thawed prey item and it sniffed it and licked it and was like, it's not alive. I don't want it. Now we go to what's referred to as tease feeding. Now, tease feeding is a very, very fine line between in excess levels of stress
Depends on the species
and piquing the animal's interest enough to take the prey item. There is, I don't want to say an art form to it. Sometimes you just wiggle the mouse in front of the snake and whap, it eats it, you know? Other times you have to use that prey item in a more aggressive way. But that also comes down to the keeper being able to read some signs of the animal and know when not to cross that line into stress, fight or flight mode. Sometimes you will agitate the animal by tease feeding it to the point where it starts to become defensive. It may even bite the prey item in a defensive strike, but at the same time realize, oh, wait, that's food. I can eat that and actually take the prey item. So it's very species specific and it's very scenario specific as well, because you got to kind of read the room.
Red hot, that's another one.
Yeah.
Pinkies, red hot pinkies.
Yep.
It's like
day olds.
Yeah,
day old pinkies. Pinky being a newborn mouse or rat. Then we talk about so we talk about tailing, right? I tailed those babies. So to tail a snake is typically to pick up the snake by the tail. This is a technique used with a lot of venomous and a lot of non-venomous too, where you're using your other hand or a snake hook to support the main body of the animal, and then your other hand is holding the snake up by the tail. When we're talking about feeding and neonates and baby snakes, when we talk about giving it a tail or tailing it, that meant that the baby snake or lizard in question is not big enough to take a legitimate prey item. And therefore, we've cut off the tail of a rat or a mouse that's already been, pre-killed, and we're using that tail as a prey item. And that bleeds into assist feeding and force feeding. Now, and Smitty has way more work with this than I do. There's several different thoughts on this, right? I am not personally a fan of assist or forced feeding. I do everything in my power to not do it because it does cause a shitload of stress on the animal. However, there is another thought process of it's a little bit of stress to get those nutrients in that animal in hopes that it will then learn on its own. Oh, wait, I got nutrients from this. Now I can take it on my own. Fair assumption, Smitty?
Kind of, yeah, to sort of jumpstart the digestive system and
right.
Get things sort of moving and the processes and metabolism to kind of kick into gear a little bit.
Right. And when we say assist feeding, that means that we've essentially coaxed the snake into opening its mouth and we put that prey item in there and then walk away in hopes that it takes it and swallows it on its own. And then force feeding it would be doing the same thing, but then restraining the animal and manually putting that prey item down its throat.
See, and that's kind of where tailing is a little odd, because I consider tailing to be more assist feeding than anything else.
Sure.
Personally. And yeah. I did it a lot with Boiga. I did it with some chondro babies. I've done it with, I think I did it with some Alterna. And to talk about sort of the stress aspect of it, Cody Bartolini, I think, had a really good point when he talked about it. And that was, it's like, in particular, when we were talking about chondros, you can sit there for 10 or 15 minutes and beat the hell out of a baby with a mouse in hopes that it grabs it, or you can put a tail in it in 15 seconds and be done.
Right.
Personally, I think that 15 seconds to just get a tail in there, slide it down, let them finish it, because that's where sort of the assist feeding aspect comes. I try to get that tail in as far as possible. and then let them do the rest of the work. Because once it does get to a certain point, it seems that they get the idea and they finish it.
Right.
The like force feeding, I've never force feeding like whole like pinkies. I've tried it before and I've never been able to successfully like get it to go down. Like I just, for whatever reason, it's the angle of the head and some of the other stuff for me. It doesn't work. So
Yeah,
I don't even bother anymore. I stick
I'm not
to
into it.
tails and eventually they'll kick into gear. And
right. And I've assist fed snakes in the past where I basically got them to open their mouth. I stuck the food in their mouth and then walked away and they took it. I don't like force feeding animals. I think it's really messed up. I understand it has its purpose and I have done it and I have helped friends do it.
Like absolute last resort.
It is the last resort. And it's typically not a baby. It's usually an adult that maybe had medical issues or a wild caught adult that's trying to be established and it's on the brink of going too far. And again, this is not something that we're really going to go into tonight, but there is a lot of technique and knowledge that needs to be learned before anyone ever tries to force feed an animal. I have watched people kill animals because they tried to put a pinky down its throat. So
I consider that forced, Brandon, but that's sort of an exception, I guess, because that's tube feeding.
That's my next one. So we're good on the whole tailing thing in terms of using a rat's tail as well as picking the snake up by the tail and then going into assist feeding where I've placed the prey item in the snake's mouth in hopes that it will eat it on its own, and then to force feeding, which is where you're forcing it down the animal's throat. Then we go into tube feeding. So typically tube feeding is where I have an appropriately sized tube attached to an appropriately sized syringe of liquid diet. And now that tube is then inserted down the snake's throat. And then that liquid diet is then injected down the snake's throat into its stomach. I
think it usually even goes farther, like goes straight to the stomach. And...
Right. Now you also have referred to as tube feeding, where the snake itself is placed inside of a tube and a prey item is slid in the other side of the tube in the hopes that the snake will consume that prey item. It's very, very rare. And
has that ever worked for anybody?
It does. We used to do it with monocle cobras that were pains in the ass, especially albinos with a really bad eyesight. And it was super simple, like not invasive at all. Like snake goes in the tube, frozen thawed rat sticking the other side. It's already pissed off. Yeah, it's like, oh, there's a rat in this tube. I'll eat it.
That's the only thing I can grab a hold of. So I guess that'll be it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then that goes to tubes themselves. When we said, oh, I tubed this snake, 99% of the time they are not talking about tube feeding. They are talking about restraining the animal inside of a tube, typically venomous, so that medical stuff can be performed on the animal, or an overall visual and physical inspection of the animal can happen. It could even be for transportation reasons. But yeah, when we talk about I tubed that snake, it's typically we're sliding the snake inside of a restraining tube so that the dangerous end is in the tube, so to speak. Typically they're clear tubes so you can see what you're doing, and that way you can get hands on without having to grab the animal by the head or anything like that.
It's really handy even for non-venomous stuff. Like usually when I have to sex an adult corn, I'll tube it and I'll have Jake or Katie hold the snake while I probe it. And it just makes it easier. It's like when they're more straightened out when they're in that tube, so it's easier to kind of get just a solid angle instead of having them like flipping around and spraying musk everywhere, which I mean, they're going to do that regardless. But like I've done it with chondros. So if I had chondros with like stuck eye shed or something, I'll tube them and get them to the point where I can, get them right behind the head, and then I can do whatever I need to do and let them go. I find it to be faster to just get it done, lower stress levels,
right?
As best as I can. But I used it for boiga when I had to get like stuck shed off the tail tips. So it does have its place with non-venomous stuff too, and I think I've even used it for Chance and I. once or twice, maybe. I think I used it for the scrub at one point for something. And sort of quick little hack. What I use is if you go, this is for non-venomous stuff. This is not for venomous stuff. Do not use these for venomous animals, for the love of God. Lowe's sells these tubes that you get to transport like fluorescent lights in, I guess, to sort of protect them from getting them banged around or whatever. You can get one that come in like 2 foot and 3 foot versions, I think, but you can get them at Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever hardware store. I think they're usually like $3 or so a piece, and I take one of those and I just cut it in half.
Yeah.
And I use that for stuff, and that thing is come in clutch so many times for all kinds of stuff. So
yeah, when I had a lot of rat snakes and big king snakes, you know, I had like 5 or 6 adult means eye now, and I would tube the king snake. I mean, it's a king snake, like not in any danger, but I would tube the king snake and I would just stick it under my armpit so that I could, you know, probe or whatever, or palpate.
Yeah, it makes things easier.
Right. And that way the thing's not, you know, I could do it without the tube, but it's probably going to bite me on the bicep. So it's easiest to just have those extra tubes handy. Another one that Anna Maria came up with, hide. You know, oh, the snake is in its hide. Well, a lot of people think like, okay,
hidey hole.
Yeah, basically a cave, a secluded area, a hide within an enclosure so the animal can physically hide. We also talk about what's called a humid hide. A humid hide is a hiding spot where you've added some kind of media to raise the humidity within that hide. So if I have one of the black plastic caves or a little rock cave where the top of the rock opens and there's a little hole in the side, I could put moss or wet paper towel or wet newspaper in there and basically allow it to be its own little hiding place with an elevated humidity. That also segues into a nest box. We always talk about, oh, did you give it a nest box? A nest box is basically a giant humid hide where a mother who's gravid, i.e. American pregnant, and humanoid pregnant, that gravid snake can go inside that giant humid hide to lay her eggs or have her litter or what have you.
Bill says in the hardware industry, those tubes are becoming obsolete. If you find them, buy them.
Yeah, there you go.
I need to be hitting up Lowe's.
Yeah, he says Ace discontinued them.
Which I guess makes sense because everything's going to LED now. So the need for, you know, fluorescent lights for indoor lighting is not as necessary as it used to be.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about breaking LEDs and glass going everywhere.
Right. Just going back to feeding stuff. We always talk about scenting. Oh, I scented it with a frog, or I scented it with lizard skin. So scenting is when I have a reptile or amphibian, typically reptile, that does not want to eat the prey that I've given it. And therefore, I will then take a different prey item and I will use that prey item to rub that prey item scent on the one I intend to feed to the animal. So if I have a mouse and I'm trying to
switcheroo,
the old switcheroo, right? So if I have a mouse, I'm trying to feed it to a snake, and the snake doesn't want the mouse because it doesn't like mice, or maybe it doesn't know it likes mice yet. And let's say it's a lizard eater predominantly. Now, some people might say you should feed it lizards. Yes, you probably should, but there's a lot of reasons why we don't. Maybe lizards aren't available. Maybe lizards are really, really expensive. Maybe lizards have a lot of parasites and you're concerned about, you know, cross-contamination of pathogens. Whatever the reason may be, the goal is to get this particular snake to eat the mouse, not the lizard. So what I will do is I will have a frozen lizard and I will thaw that lizard out when I thaw out the frozen mouse. And that way it's thawing together and they're marinating in each other's juices. I've also taken a frozen lizard and literally rubbed it on a frozen thawed mouse to just take the scent of the lizard and put it on that mouse. In the case of my telescopus babies, I took lizard shed skin and I wrapped a frozen thawed pinky in lizard shed, like a little burrito, and that worked and they ate it. And there's also several companies out like Reptilinks, where they basically have a liquid chemical that's made from frogs and lizards and snails, and you add this liquid scent to a prey item like a mouse to feed and entice this said snake. Sometimes it works like $1,000,000. Sometimes it doesn't work at all. And that's just the process of scenting, is just trying different things. I'm going through it right now with the stilettos. So
yeah, and so the reason I recommend the lighting tubes as opposed to like the venomous grade tubes is the venomous grade tubes are expensive.
Yes, they are.
But those should be used for venomous, and the simple Home Depot tubes can be used for pretty much everything else.
Well put. Well put.
Smaller stuff. So like those tubes, I think are usually only like 2.5 inches in diameter. So it's not like something you can use for, an adult boa.
Right. Right.
But for colubrids and sort of thinner stuff, they're perfect. Just side note.
Well put. So going back to scenting, one of the things that we do before we get to the scenting point is what we call braining. Braining is a great way to entice a snake to eat a prey item. Braining is when you have and again, for the YouTube people listening to this, a already euthanized frozen prey item that you've then thawed, and then you take a small needle or a syringe, or not syringe. Yeah, syringe would work.
I just take a razor blade.
Or a razor blade, and you're putting a very small incision or a puncture wound into that prey item's brain. And you're going to get some of those brain juices to come out. Not a lot, just a drop or two. And that, for whatever reason, that sweet, sweet, delicious brain juice turns everything on. And it usually works on a lot of species, especially with colubrids. However, it may not. It's not guaranteed, but that is something that we try. So if you say, so I'm talking to Smitty about my new baby telescopus, and I say, yeah, man, I tried everything. I even brained some pinkies. That does not mean I took a handful of live pinkies and popped all their heads open. That is not the case.
Don't be a sick fuck.
Yes, don't be a sick fuck.
I'm not even going to bother turning monetization on for this one, because what's the point?
Yeah.
I can already tell you're going to go no.
Yeah, exactly. But it does work like $1,000,000 with a lot of species.
Yeah, it's odd. Like you wouldn't think that would make a difference, but for whatever reason, there's some it doesn't seem to be a species specific thing, but some of them, man, it's just like all of a sudden they're like, oh wait, that's food. Like obviously.
Yeah.
It's weird.
And to go along with braining, if you listen to this show on a fairly regular basis, you've heard Smitty and I talk about cuts.
Cutting.
We don't mean rock cuts. We mean mouse cuts. So, Smitty, take it away.
Oh man, if you've listened to us, you've heard my spiel on cutting prey items. Basically, the Cliff Notes version is you take a frozen thawed prey item, you make some cuts down the back, either one long one, or I prefer to do like 4 or so perpendicular to the spine down the back. And the sort of what's on paper, what's supposed to happen is it's supposed to make the efficiency of those animals being able to digest that item and get past the skin, which is what a large majority of the digestive process spends time trying to get through to get to the good stuff. By making these cuts, you're making that process a lot easier and a lot more efficient per prey item. There was a small sample size study done a couple years ago where someone took a group of corn snakes and they did various numbers of cuts for different groups. And the ones that had a minimum of 4 cuts, growth rates were crazy high in comparison to everything else. So I think there's something to it. I do it with my stuff because it takes 2 seconds to do. I do it with adult animals, especially females that are going into breeding season or possibly, got eggs happening. Because I basically want them to get the most out of each meal and expend less energy trying to do that.
Right.
I think they get more per meal out of it because, like I said, they're not spending so much energy and resources on just trying to get past the skin. To me, anecdotally, it seems like they digest meals way faster than if you just give it to them straight.
Yeah.
I've noticed, like, I mean, I'll feed all the baby corns and I'll do that. And I mean, that lump within, 48 hours is gone. So, and Billy Jenkins asked, how do you keep it from getting really messy? It really isn't. If you're not doing like super deep cuts, you're just like scoring the skin like you would like a hot dog or something when you're going to go cook it. I have figured out that with like chondros that are guaranteed to grab, wrap, and squeeze the ever living hell out of it, to do the cuts at the base of the tail and closer together, just like smaller cuts at the base of the tail. That way, because I have had a few where I cut midsection down. As soon as they squeezed it, it was gross. So
Yeah.
for stuff like carpets and things that don't just take it and eat it, but instead just insist that it's alive and that they have to kill it again, do it closer to the tail or probably closer to the neck, just not in the midsection, because that's where all that energy is going to get compressed and it's just going to spray everywhere. So
yeah, and Smitty, he feeds a lot more frozen thaw than I do. I actually feed a lot of stuff live. So obviously I'm not cutting live because that's sick and inhumane. But what I do is I actually found that for me, I've tried, X-Acto blades and scalpels and stuff, and it works great. For me, I actually got a cuticle scissors. The only and because they're very, very sharp and I can get real, real close. I do under the armpits and then in front of the hind legs where that like webbing is. And then I'll do one just on the nape. And
I'm sure that does just as well.
Yeah.
I think any cut that sort of helps the stomach acid and stuff get in there
right.
and start doing its job is going to be beneficial.
Yeah, and I honestly, it would not shock me if Smitty's technique is more efficient in terms of the digestion. It still works like $1,000,000 with my animals, 100%. I like the cuticle scissors though, because if you haven't had as much experience like Smitty has, I have used the X-Acto knife or the scalpel and gone too deep.
It's pretty easy to, yeah.
Right. And now the cuticle scissors, they're rounded on the end. So I'm only cutting the skin. I'm not even cutting into I'm cutting the mesentery, but I'm not into the muscle tissue at all. I'm just cutting skin, which is, again, to allow it to allow those stomach digested enzymes and stuff to get underneath that epidermis.
And actually, if anybody wants to see a video, me and Jake did one a couple years ago.
Oh, that's right.
That is on this channel. You're going to have to scroll through old videos and stuff, but it is there. And I kind of show the process of it and how I do it. So at some point, I keep saying this. I feel like I've been saying this for the last 4 years. I'm going to try and recreate that study myself or sort of do my own version of it. The problem is then I have to hold on to a bunch of baby snakes for an indefinite period of time. But I don't know. Maybe 2023 is the year. It's just a matter of, like I said, space mostly.
Yeah.
And then it will be interesting to see, because I did try it with the chondros for a while, with the baby chondros, but the problem is I'd have days where I had to feed everything and move on because I was, I had something else going on that day, so I had to just get it done, and that kind of just went to the wayside.
Yeah.
But I think, even if, like I said, a small sample size still, and I've said this before about that study as well, the sample size was small, but I think with the numbers and results that she got when she did that study, it's kind of hard to argue that there isn't something there, I think. And someone else could be much more versed in that stuff and see it and be like, yeah, it's bullshit. Like I said, it takes 2 seconds to do. So even if it is just total crap and doesn't do anything, you're not out anything but the extra, like I said, 2 seconds to make some cuts, and that's it. So
yeah. I personally have tried it with I don't do it with my colubrids are still small, so I'm still feeding live rat pups and live rat pinks and stuff. But I don't do it with Dramarchon because their metabolism is so high. I don't do it with nausea species because their metabolism is so high. It's honestly just a waste of time. They're going to digest it and poop it out in a day or two anyway. But Morelia and my Fuscus, and the one that really the one that made me say, okay, Smitty was right, I'm going to keep doing this, was the Rincals, because they're predominantly toad eaters in the wild. And I was getting so much fur and undigested crap in their stool. And I was like, you know what? Let me do the cuts with them, and it just works. There's less fur
Mm-hmm.
in their stool, and I really feel like it's because they're getting to digest the good stuff faster, that by the time they're done digesting the good stuff, they still have time to digest the fuzz.
Right. And that's what I'm talking about, is you're kind of like reversing that. So where instead of it spends a ton
Yeah.
of energy digesting the outside, the skin and the fur, and it's getting less, or it's not getting as much of those nutrients from the inside and the things that it needs. You're helping that along, and you're making it just easier on that system in general. So, and less stool. I haven't paid attention enough to notice any major difference there, but with some of the older animals, I've definitely noticed the same thing, where there is less fur and there's less of those
Yeah.
like skin casing type deals you get
Yes.
sometimes with the bigger animals. So like I said, I think there's something to it. Scott said he's wanting to try it with some stuff this year, which I'm really, you're going to keep me in the loop on that, Scott, because I'm very curious. It's one of those things where it's like, this could, with stuff like baby chondros and like cyanea, things that come out tiny that need nutrients, like as much as you can, if you can get it to them better to where they're growing a little faster and they get a little more size on them to where you can upgrade them to fuzzies from pinkies to where there's a little more to them, I think it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah.
It's like, especially if you're dealing with a species that can be a little tougher to get started, or a species that is kind of a slow starter to begin with, as far as like kind of taking off and getting some size to them. I think it's a huge leg up there. So
yeah, I agree. And like
but
you were
that's
saying,
go ahead.
I was saying, like you were saying, like those like skin casing and stuff with some of the wrinkles, they would defecate an entire mouse tail. And it's like, now I don't see that at all. So
yeah. And that was the other sort of thing with why I didn't pursue it more seriously, in terms of like doing it myself and sort of documenting it, even if it's not in official sort of scientific capacity. But because I mostly want to get better idea of results for myself and then share them with everybody. It's not necessarily like this is a scientifically proven thing to happen. It's just, I want to find out more. But that also requires me to weigh everybody on the same dates. Like, yeah, it's not going to be hardcore scientific level studying or anything like that, but I do want it to be consistent to where there aren't variables where people could say like, well, you measured this group, you weighed them on a Monday, but you weighed the other group on a Friday.
Yeah.
So we'll see, but I don't know. It's I think it's really cool, and it's a for some reason a lot of people didn't really think about it until that paper was published, and I know I published. It's gone now. I have it saved. So
excellent.
At some point, I don't know if I don't think I'd be allowed to. I want to put it on the website so bad, but I don't know that I'm allowed to. So
yeah, you got to contact the authors.
She's hard to get a hold of. That's the problem.
I get it. And Scott says, it works great with Oxyuranus, Acanthopus, and Pseudechis. So, and those are species that I imagine are eating mostly reptilian-based diets in the wild. And, if it's working, great. Scott says he's saying the same thing about tails and such. So that's awesome. Did you have any other captivity stuff?
Stats. So hemostats, sometimes thermostats, but stats, the little tweezers you use to offer food.
Yeah. Tongs is a good one, because like we always say tongs, we don't mean salad tongs, we mean giant tweezers.
Yeah. Some people use salad tongs, and if that works, that works. Substrate. What kind of sub are you keeping them on? Neuro and / stargazing. So neuro you hear a lot with like jags in carpets, jaguar gene, spiders and ball pythons. And then sun-kissed corns early on had what was called stargazing, which has been sort of bred out as of the last several years. But then you get stargazing with boas, which is a symptom of IBD, which is inclusion body disease. So basically, stargazing is like you have a snake that's like perpetually and has issues just staring, like they're staring up, like they're just staring straight up. Your snake may do that from time to time just because they're curious. It doesn't mean they have stargazing.
Right.
But if it's a continual problem and they're clearly like neuro falls into that category where they're like doing loop to loops, like the baseball and angel in the outfield, it's that's considered neurological problems. So
right.
Jags and spider balls, they have the wobble, and to varying degrees. You're going to get some that have a lot of neuro. You're going to have some that have little neuro. I was unaware. It wasn't until talking to Pinnell on THP a couple weeks ago that he's had some that, Jags that they hatched out fine, and it wasn't until a couple years later that the neuro started to develop. I always thought it was something that kind of just, they came out that way and it just stuck with them.
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me that it could be a age developed thing.
Yeah.
Or some sort of stressor that's a catalyst for it to sort of show up and not go away. I don't know, but
Billy Hunt was telling me that the majority of the ones that he's seen from the Jaguar carpet gene is stress related. So, he had a Jaguar carpet that
some sort of stimulus.
Yeah, if you took it out and just held it calmly, everything was fine. If you open the drawer real quick and yoinked it out of its enclosure, it's going to start to stress and start to bow and twist and convulse and whatever else. Not to be derogatory towards one of the greatest musicians of all time, but it's typically referred to as Stevie Wonder syndrome because the snake is constantly moving its head back and forth.
Doing the Ray Charles?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Doing the Ray Charles.
I never heard it called that, but yeah. Sure.
So, you had mentioned snakes looking up in the air. Anna Maria had a great one, periscoping. So, I walked into my snake room and saw my, ball python periscoping. What is periscoping? Periscoping is something that snakes do. Doesn't matter the species. They all do it. Some do it more than others, where they basically stiffen and elongate the first third, if not the first half of their body, and they stretch up to the sky and they just stare straight at the ceiling. Sometimes some people think that it's a relaxation technique. Some people think that it's a sensory thing where they're getting higher above the grass or higher above the environment they're in to kind of survey their surroundings. Some people think that it's a defense tactic to be more alert towards predators and predation. But yeah, snakes do it. They literally stick up straight like the periscope on a submarine. So,
but you notice you seem to see it more with more visually acute species. So like your coach whips and your racers. Coach whips here are kind of like, that's like when I think of coach whips, I think of a coach whip in a field like periscoping, like its head's above the grass and it's looking around. I've seen racers do it. I haven't really seen many in the way of rat snakes do it. Like I said, it seems to be much more of a like active hunter type snakes. I know I've seen pictures of like berms doing it, but outside of sort of the coluber stuff, I don't.
Yeah, I think the most common in captivity is probably ball pythons. I see ball pythons do it a lot. I've seen king snakes do it. King snakes do it really, really well in captivity because they have no fear of predation. So they're just like, oh, I'll sprawl out. But I've seen them do it like when we're road cruising. I'll see the king snake head up, and it's not a full 90 degrees straight up, but like it's definitely elevated itself. Yeah. And I don't know if that's because it's about to cross the road or it's sniffing the air. Who knows? So tripoding. That's another great one. You want to do that one?
You're talking about like monitors?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never had mine do it. I've seen pictures of it. A lot of the Australian stuff.
Yeah. So basically, some of the Australian monitors.
Garter's periscope.
Yeah, Garter's periscope real well. Some of the Australian monitors will stiffen their tail and use it as a third point of contact to lift the front half of their body up basically kind of like when a dog begs and the dog stands up on its hind legs. The monitor lizard is then using its tail, its rigid tail, as the third point of contact, as a tripod, to stand up and either and Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, but like Argus monitors do it as a form of defense as well as a form of observation. I know Parentes, I think, do it as a form of defense. I'll give it a second. Let him chime in. Yeah, he says all the time. They do it for threat display. Yeah, very cool. That was another great term. Speaking of periscoping and tripoding, bobbing, dewlapping. Lizards, for the most part, will bob their head as a form of dominance or to attract a member of the opposite sex. They also have that thin skin flap on their neck that they can open and close, typically brightly colored, orange, pink, purple, whatever. That's called a dewlap. And they'll, in the conjunction with the head bobbing, they'll also move that dewlap in and out as a form of, dominance towards other males for combat over a female, or to entice a female to breed. Did you have any more other captive stuff?
Yeah. So we mentioned put them down at the beginning of the episode. So like putting stuff in the cooling.
Yeah.
Putting them down for the winter. Get them ready for breeding season. Give them that nice brumation period. Rolled. So a lot of people, something dies or they lose something. It rolled on me.
Yeah, and
you hear that a lot.
That term comes from anyone who's had a lot of snakes, a lot of lizards too. The more animals you have, the higher probability you have for death. It is sad. It's part of it. We do everything in our power to make that not happen. But the term "it rolled on me" comes from when most snakes, if not all snakes, and lots of lizards too, is when they die, they completely invert and they roll over on their back. Again, it's mostly snakes. It's not species specific. It's just snakes do it. Some snakes will even bite themselves prior to dying. No one really knows why, whether it's venomous or not. They still do it. But I would say almost all, if not all of the snakes that I've ever had pass away, I've found them completely inverted upside down. So,
yeah. Palpate. That was another one that Westmoreland mentioned earlier too. So you have a female and you're wondering if she's gravid or not. Usually you can feel those eggs if she's got them and she's close to sort of dropping them. Corn snakes kind of come to mind because that's typically what I do it with whenever I'm wondering if a pairing took. And it's just letting that female sort of move through your hands in a sort of when she's more of a relaxed state. You can feel those those eggs a lot easier than if she's sort of tensed up. So palpating, you can feel those eggs in that lower third. So,
I actually, with the exception of venomous, I palpate my stuff all the time, simply because the more animals you have, the less you can finally. What's the word I'm looking for? The more animals you have in a collection, the less you can acutely observe them. So if I'm cleaning and I have to remove the animal and it's not venomous, I'm palpating it almost every time, because I want to make sure there's no obstructions. I want to make sure there's no impaction or any kind of tumors or anything that I need to worry about, and after you've done it enough and you've handled enough of different species and enough of the same species too, you'll learn what it's supposed to feel like and what it's not supposed to feel like. Don't be surprised if when you do it, even if the first time you ever do it, the snake takes a dump on you. You're basically pushing on their pelvis. So imagine, someone picked you up off your lazy boy off the couch and started pressing on your pelvis. You'd probably have to want to go to the bathroom too. So and yeah, Scott says he palpates venomous all the time. Carefully. Yes, very carefully. And keeping with the whole theme of bobbing, periscoping, tripoding, all that, another one is bucking and twitching. So a lot of snakes will buck like a horse, trying to get the cowboy off the back of them. That is typically a form of itching. They may have an itch on their back and they just need to give a little twitch out of it. Sometimes they twitch because they got a shiver, just like you and I get goosebumps, we get a shiver, whatever. Bill says Phil just sent tripod pic. All right, let me see what I got. Let me pull this up. But it's also a direct correlation with breeding and mating, whether it be mating ritual or just enticing the opposite sex. A male snake may slither on top of a female snake in an attempt to entice her to want to breed. She may not be ready and she may try and buck him off of her back. Oh man, Bill sent some great pictures for this. All right, let's try and get these up and running. All right. So yeah, so if you see a snake twitching, it may just have a shiver. If you see it a lot, it may be something neurological. It may have another issue. It may have some kind of subcutaneous parasite. You never know. Go to your vet. Check your vet out. All right, let me try and share these pictures that Bill sent, which I got to be honest, I feel like we should have known better and we should have had pictures ready. So there's the dewlap on a green iguana. Look at that guy. Majestic. I love it. So this whole big flap of skin here, that's the dewlap. I'm pretty sure. There you go. There's another colorful one right there. All right. And this one, you can see the dewlap's there. It's a little more recessed. It's probably not fully open. And there's tripoding. I'm going to zoom in. So there's an Argus monitor. It is wearing a leashed harness, but you can see it's using its tail, which is, in it behind it and shadowed behind it. And it's got the two legs, one there, and it's using the tail in the middle to stand up like a tripod.
It's a weird looking dog.
It's an adorable dog. Now, he sent me another photo. Let me see what I got here. Hold on. Oh, this is just cool. Let's show this off. So these are vestigial toes on a boa. It's very cool.
Looks like my feet.
Looks like Jake's feet.
I'm going to get a leash for the Ackies.
Go for it.
And undo the weeks of work I put in.
All right, one more dewlap for the archives. Here we go. Look at that guy. Look at that handsome lizard. Gorgeous.
Hanging out.
Just chilling. Sign of a happy lizard. Did you have any more
no, that was palpate. Palpate was the last one I had.
Okay. So I asked the Podfather if he had any recommendations for this evening. And because he is the Podfather of Morelia Python Radio, he had 3 Morelia, basically 2 are acronyms, which I know we said we weren't going to do acronyms, but these are very prevalent in the Morelia community. So someone who is just getting into Morelia, whether it be carpets or diamonds or chondros or what have you, they may have heard these terms, and it's very difficult to Google an acronym, So the first one is actually DPS, okay? Delta Papa Sierra, DPS, and that stands for Diamond Python Syndrome. I had not heard of that, but apparently many, many moons ago, in the diamond python community in the United States, a lot of diamonds were dying at 4 and 5 years old. and people could not figure out why. And they basically said, okay, well, this line or this group of animals has DPS, this diamond python syndrome, and they die. Well, come to find out that people were just keeping them too hot, and the animals just weren't surviving properly. When people started to lower the temperature and they realized that it's a colder weather species, now people were successful, and no one's ever had DPS since. So for anyone who's going back through forums and old stuff, that's there you go. And there's Scott called it. It's due to keeping them too hot. Another one which I thought was great is SIBs, like sibling. So everyone talks about SIBs. Oh, I have a gamma SIB, or I have a jag SIB, or what have you. And I was even confused to this. So I thought that a SIB was simply a het sibling, but it's not. And according to the Podfather, it is a normal coastal that came from the same clutch as a jaguar, but just happens to look brighter and is not necessarily a het. There you go, kids. Those are your SIBs. And
I have a habit of using SIB and clutchmate sort of interchangeably.
Yeah, but are you using it for Morelia for carpets?
No.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you said, "Oh man, this is this Tessera honey is a SIB to that other Motley or whatever," I would say, "Okay, I get it."
But there is a difference, because you can have something that's a SIB that wasn't a clutchmate.
That's very true. Very true. That is true. But again, when we're talking about Morelia, though, we're talking about coastal morphs in carpets.
Nobody keeps Morelia.
And then the other one was MBB. So Mike Bravo MBB. So that stands for the Madame Blueberry line bred to the Benjamin line. So if people are getting into Morelia, specifically carpets, that's what MBB is, Madame Blueberry X Benjamin. And what did Bill Bradley send me now? What do I got here? Oh, an excellent thing. An excellent. How come I didn't think of this? Dun, dun, dun.
Weirdest looking Trojan I've ever seen.
So that is the shed skin of the head of a snake. And we see the two eye caps. So if we ever hear people talk about eye caps, the actual scale that covers the eye, the lens that is over the actual eye, is its own independent scale. And a lot of times if a snake is dehydrated or it had a bad shed, it may retain those caps on its eye, which is not good. It can lead to obviously vision issues. It can lead to infections. It can lead to worse and worse sheds as time goes on. I've seen some snakes where the owner did not know that this was a thing, and the snake had 2 or 3 layers of eye caps retained on their eye. Very, very bad. Again, you can't fault someone who doesn't know, but at the same time, you got to do your due diligence and you got to learn about that stuff. So I hear it dinging. What else did Bill send? Let's see. What do we got here? Oh, nice. And here we have vestigial feet on a legless lizard.
Does that mean they're truly legless?
I mean, I wouldn't call those things legs. But that's pretty cool, man. Pretty cool. So yeah, that concludes my list that I had. I'm trying to see if I missed anything. Oh, in the can. I put the snake in the can.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of people don't realize this, but many venomous keepers around the world use garbage cans as a holding vessel for their venomous snake while they're cleaning the enclosure. I personally have a giant, 55 or 52 gallon Rubbermaid trash can with matching lid. And it's marked, danger venomous, do not open, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes they're on wheels, they're on caster wheels, so you can wheel it around your snake room. And basically, I'll remove said snake, place it in the garbage can, put the lid on. It's not meant for garbage. It's specifically marked for snakes. I keep it clean for snakes. I have a separate garbage can that's for garbage. And then I'll keep that snake in that can. A lot of keepers, especially venomous, will actually take their snake hook and they'll lay it across the lid of the trash can as a universal sign for a snake in the can. So
it's the international symbol for don't open it up.
Exactly. So if Smitty and I are talking and I'm like, yeah, man, the Ethiopian cobra, I don't know why, but it just went batty on me. I opened the lid of the can and it shot right out. Or I went to go put it in the can and it pooped on me. Well, when I say the can, that's what we're referring to. We're referring to a very, very large, typically hard rubberized trash can used exclusively for containing venomous temporarily.
And the irony is like the hook across the top means absolutely nothing to people that don't know that.
You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. Oh, Bill had a good one. Man, why didn't Bill not come on tonight? This is a great one. I didn't even think of this one. I'm going to let you do this one, Smitty.
Oh.
Boom. There they are.
Yeah. Let me tell y'all about plugs.
Plug it up, baby.
So they're commonly called sperm plugs. But the issue is they can't necessarily be sperm plugs because the hemipines are inverted. So that's kind of technically like the outside of the hemipines being shed.
And what is this plug used for?
Normally, I don't know about with carpets, but with green tree pythons, usually around the 2 to 3 year old mark. If it's a male, they start shedding these. And it's much more obvious with males because you get something like that with some chondros. I've had them pop them and they look like little antennae coming from the vent. And then females don't have that. They just have kind of like a how would I describe it? Like the base part of that. So without the two like plug parts on both sides of that centerpiece, imagine just that sort of centerpiece. It's typically female, but like I said, in chondros specifically, you're not going to see those for a couple years. But it's usually a pretty good sign. That's why, like with a lot of my chondros, I don't bother sexing them because eventually, if it's a boy, I'll get plugs and I don't have to do anything. So perfect.
Now, everyone in the group chat, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong because I have been wrong before, but it was to my knowledge that sperm plug specifically is a waxy mucus discharge that solidifies and is used to basically keep sperm within the female to ensure that none escapes and also to prohibit, or let me rephrase that, used to deter another male's genetics from consummating that female.
See, I don't know. I mean, they're like I said, they're inverted. So what you see there would technically be the outside.
Right, but it's still deposited in the female.
Oh, I mean, yeah. There's. I'm sure there is sperm and things involved in that, but like within those, like it's not just like a sheath or anything like that. But
right. Yeah, Lisa says that she's pretty sure garter snakes actually use them as plugs. So, like I said, I've been wrong before. To the best of my knowledge, that's how that worked. But hopefully someone in the group chat knows more than us and can educate us on this.
Where's Scott? Scott.
Where's Bill? Oh, Bill sent me something else. Oh, I hear dings. Hold on.
Bill, you act like you need an invite.
Oh, this one's cool too. This is good. Will you please send him the link?
Yeah.
I don't know enough about this one to speak about it, so I'm gonna let Bill talk about it. I'll wait to throw it up on the screen. He says technically you do need an invite because it's a link.
What smart ass.
Little does he know the link we send him is always the same. No, yeah, we're gonna send it. Send it now, Smitty.
I just did.
Okay, good. Billy boy, get in here.
Billy boy. Might take him a minute. Don't send it now. I'm almost out of stuff.
No, that's the point. Get him on here. Let's hear the rest of it. Justin, I just got your palmetto photos. It just dinged just now. We'll throw them up while we're waiting for Bill to join. Oh, wait,
Oh, wow,
there he
that was
is.
quick.
Good.
I see that beard.
Excellent. Good.
What's up?
What's up?
I only hope that when I get older, I can have like the white in the front and the. Unless I think you may just color it that way.
No, I do not color it that way.
You know what it is? It's
You
from
can tell me it'll be our secret.
It's from all the delicious food he consumes.
That is true. That I would tell people that, except like the silver and stuff that's coming in. If I let the hair grow, makes it a little more obvious that.
Or he uses the Just for Men, but he doesn't do it on this front part here. So
Yeah, I just run out.
It's natural. It just happens that way.
Yeah. All right. So here's what Bill sent, and I'm going to zoom in. So this is called paradoxing. Bill, why don't you tell us about?
I didn't have a good example. It's a thing that people talk about in ball pythons a lot, but it happens in a lot of different morphs for snakes that are supposed to be yellow and white, all white, orange and white, some version of what people think of as albinism or leucism. And then you'll have black spots that appear and scales that darken, which shouldn't happen if the snake actually is amelanistic or amelanistic and anorthoristic at the same time to make it all white, but it does. So it's a paradox that's impossible. It's amelanistic. Well, there's 3 black spots, so it's called paradoxing.
And I'm more familiar with this in Carphodactylidae, where you have, it's very, very rare in the United States. In fact, I'm pretty sure, there's only 1 or 2 guys in the country that have Nephris with paradox. Excuse me. But basically, instead of having the black dots, it's almost like a washed out watercolor where what should be a patch, what should be a uniform color is washed out and kind of blurry. Let me see if I could find it. I was going to ask you, it's basic. They call it paradox, but I don't know if it's the same genetic thing that's happening with like the lizard in front of us.
So actually, I saw
beardy,
one of the comments. Somebody asked if those were Dalmatian spots. So yeah, that's the back of a crested gecko.
Wow, crested. Okay.
That particular crested is like uniformly tan and orange, and then just has it developed over time, like just a handful of those black spots. And then like cresteds are really weird when it comes to morphs and being kind of polygenic, and they do a lot of weird stuff. And quite a bit of it is heritable, but that particular guy developing it late in life like that, it just really struck me more as how it happens in stand boas, ball pythons, and the paradoxing spots.
Chimera is sort of what they call that in carpets over in Australia, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, and then the problem too is that when you run into things like the green trees, right, where the design, like you guys have talked about a lot with designer green trees, trying to get a lot more blue and black and dark colors. And then you get papers that say that that's maybe due to hybridization. And so like you hear Nick, well, you hear Nick Mutton talk about how with morphs, like melanocytes and things, they don't travel on their own. They travel with other things. And so you have a lot of weird morphological differences. Well, if you are actually hybridizing two species, then when your baby develops, maybe your melanocytes aren't traveling the way that you thought they would. And so you get really sweet chondros that aren't just green because their melanocytes aren't traveling correctly. And so a lot of these things could be very similar. And especially like when they talk about chimeras and things that show up in carpet pythons, and then we get a new carpet python book that says maybe some of those things are mixing and matching and getting a little weird. Well, then maybe your melanocytes aren't traveling correctly because that wasn't your distant relative, that was your cousin. And now your babies look funny.
Yeah.
I sent you some pictures of some paradoxes.
Okay. I was trying to find this one knobtail that's crazy looking, but I can't remember who sent it to me. All right, let me grab yours first. Hold on.
And it's actually a thing. It's a really big thing for banana balls. They develop black spots like that. And it was just a weird thing that happened where it's supposed to be a brown and yellow snake, and then you get these black freckles. It starts trending way more toward like a hog island. Almost looks like the thing has mites all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I actually hate my hog island for that reason. Every time I look at it, it makes my skin itch. And it's perfectly clean. It just looks that way.
All right. Facebook. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's paradox corn. I mean, it's not just corn. It's got like granite and some other stuff in it. But typically when you see paradox, like you see varying degrees of it. That's a pretty hardcore example.
It's a great looking animal.
Yeah, it is.
That's
Amazon
awesome.
tree boas. There's a good bit of. There was one guy at one point. I don't know what happened to him or where he went, but he was working with Amazons. Some of the coolest looking paradox Amazons I've ever seen. He was doing under like Paradox Predators, I think, but I don't know where he went because that was a couple years ago and he kind of fell off the map. But he had some of the coolest looking paradox Amazons I've ever seen. Just absolutely ridiculous. And that's another corn. But Westmoreland, he's in the chat. Me and Chris have talked about the paradox thing, I think, on Corn Stars a couple times, and it seems like inheritability doesn't seem to be there in like the traditional sense. Like it almost seems more like a random thing that I could be completely wrong on that. I'm maybe confusing it with something else, but it sounded like the paradox thing didn't really get passed the same way, genes typically would in what we see with a lot of the other morphs.
I would bet as the genetic thing, like, how they have the markers now for black pastel and a couple of different things in ball pythons. I'm sure it's going to be very complicated, but something like piebald, where you can sort of guess higher percentage off a mom, but not really. If they can start to figure out the avenues for heritability on something like that, I would think it would lend itself to something like paradox or what we call paradox. But man, that seems like very difficult genetic work.
Joe said paradox is not heritable, whereas the speckling of bananas is linked to the gene inheritable. He's hatched a few true paradox bananas.
There you go.
Yeah. I just I'm sure obviously there's got to be some sort of genetic component to it because otherwise it just wouldn't exist. But in terms of the traditional heritability of incomplete dominant and, hets and things like that, I just don't think the same rules necessarily apply. But
yeah. Well, and that's like he was talking about there in the chat where, snakes muddy up or brown out or whatever with age. Like the developing melanism with age has been common. I mean, just red tails back in the day, really old red tails aren't red anymore. Their tails aren't red. Like they just get so much more black in their tails. That's how you know they're old. That was always a thing. You know, babies have beautiful bright red tails. Then you get these import old females and they look just jet black and hate the world. Like that was how you knew they were old.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That's why everybody gets mad about super fire and super Mojave ball pythons. They're like, oh, they turn yellow and brown with age. It's like, yeah, they're old. Like nobody looks awesome when they're old.
I don't know.
You get white in your beard and then people make fun of you. Jerks.
It's pretty awesome, Billy. Pretty awesome.
Yeah, so that's the chimera that Eric was mentioning.
Obviously, this is a photograph of a computer screen, you know, but were those fingerprints?
It's got like hives.
Yeah. That's
Jeff
crazy.
said it's a segment of misread genetic code, I believe. The DNA itself isn't mutated and therefore won't pass on the paradox appearance, which sounds about right. And I'm sure Wyman will listen to
There you
this
go.
and send us a very lengthy response that explains it all and makes us all feel very, very dumb, but educated as a result.
Yes, always. Well, I
But
can't find.
that makes me wonder, like with pieds and calicos and paradoxes, like how is there, Wyman, if you're listening to this, answer me and my dumb question, please.
Bark twice if you're in Milwaukee.
The difference between the three, because I mean, essentially, you're looking at calico is going to be kind of not exactly that's going to be sort of the exception, I guess, because it's not exactly the same as like, but pied and paradox, I would assume are very similar.
It's expression though. When you look at something like calico, you can look at the calico things. You can go scale by scale and see that the expression of those melanocytes is different as you go. Whereas when you do something about like piebald, you can actually see, especially on balls, that's why they're perfect for that, is you can see where the patterning ends. And it's actually it's the expression of the color, but it's the expression of the color and the pattern. So in the way that the color is expressed, and both of those are just turned off. So you can see the pattern of the ball end, and then you also see a total lack of color. So I think it's more of an expression of those genes, and that would make sense when he was talking about paradox and chimera, why they don't pass the way we think they would pass, is because that animal, what is broken, quote, mutated for the morph in that animal is the expression of those genes, not the gene itself. And so you could pass on good genes, and if your dad's expression works and your mom's expression is broken, and you inherited dad's good expression, then you'll express cinder or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, whereas if you hit the odds and you got mom's bad expression because it turns out that grandpa on dad's side had bad expression, then you'll be a cinder with crappy expression. That's a super simplified way of that.
Yeah,
but
I guess
makes
like
sense.
the question is, how is pied and paradox different? I mean, obviously pied is recessive, right?
Yeah, it's straight up pets and
So then
heterozygous and homozygous.
what would make
Yeah.
that different from paradox? Like, why would paradox not be recessive, but pied is, when the expression is so similar in a way?
I think it's the heritability of that broken expression. You get a het pied ball python, that's the ringer. You can tell, you know, and you can. Het pied retics and het pied ball pythons look like stuff, and pied retics look weird. They don't look like they're like silver and white. They're not retic and white like a ball python is. And so it's, I think the broken expression is what you inherit. And then in the same way, whereas if both of your parents have a broken expression, then you would inherit, like you'll probably be a high percentage, quote unquote, pied. But if you had a het and a homo, then the het is somewhere in their past, their expression is broken. So my grandpa's expression was broken and my mom's expression is broken. So now what are you going to get out of that? 75%, 80, 92. Like, I think that's why things like pied are so variable, is because you don't know the percentage. You don't know what's been passed on as far as the actual expression that's here. I don't know. Like, that's a hard way to explain.
At the same time, we're only talking about mom's side. you know, you could have had that that expression in dad's great grandfather, and no one knew because it was in the bush somewhere, you know.
Well, and then like when you talk to Wyman and Julander and a couple of these guys too, like we're running into weird stuff now too with epigenetics and the changes that happen in real time to the gametes of those animals, and now we're going to impact that. And you know, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff like that it's going to have a major effect.
It said that you have 9 direct inbreedings, I think it's like 9 to 14 direct inbreedings in reptiles before an abnormality will occur. So the question is, was the abnormality noticeable enough to be considered a genetic anomaly? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like I guess the question that I'd ask Wyman is like, what are the 2 different avenues that Paradox and Pied take that makes them different but looks similar?
Yeah.
Like what happens on the genetic level that makes one go this way and one go that way instead of them sort of operating similar? That's kind of what I want to know.
Just speaking of pied ball pythons, and by the way, just because we're doing slang terms, like homo is homozygous and het is heterozygous. For the people that want to Google this stuff. When we're talking about like you were saying how variable pied in ball pythons or royal pythons is, has anyone ever tried, and this may be again, you guys chime in, Wyman chime in, this may be completely a waste of time and I'm talking out of my ass, but has anyone observed not necessarily the scale count, but like the array in which the pigment is different? Like we oftentimes see what Bill was saying, the break, right? Where it's like normal color and then there's a straight wall and then white. Okay. And you may get the occasional black scale here or brown scale there, but is there any kind of correlation with the type of scale and the arrangement of said scales on that part of the snake? Does that make sense?
Ooh, that'd be cool.
You know what I'm saying? Like if it's supposed
you get
to
weird
have
stuff in ball pythons too, like scaleless head, micro scale.
Yeah.
I would bet that there probably is. There's the potential for a correlation there because we know that there are other morphs that relate in that way. And it turns out that scaleless, or the lack of development of scales, is actually really common in a lot of reptiles and is a mutation that has shown up in a lot of things. So
Which is another thing that blows my mind, and I in general too, not just scaleless, but like the fact that you can have what is expressed as the same mutation pop up in multiple species. Like you can have scaleless bearded dragons, scaleless spectacle cobras, scaleless water cobras, scaleless puff adders, scaleless aatrox. Like that's wild to me that you can have that same thing across the board.
Why? Everybody grows fingernails, everybody grows hair. It just breaks in a different way. And male pattern baldness is literally called patterned baldness. Yeah, like the ways that we develop those things are similar across the board. It would make sense that squamates, in order to be a squamate, you have to share some traits.
Yeah.
So I mean that scale development is, I mean, realistically would be a trait that all squamates share. So it stands to reason that the breaking of that
maybe it's more so odd because we see it now popped up in so many different things because people, the internet.
Oh, sure.
That now it seems like all of a sudden there's an explosion of scaleless things when they've, it's probably already been there to some degree, but whatever had it didn't survive, so we never saw it.
Yeah, I think the first.
Well, but look at the way. Sorry, Phil. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Bill.
Well, my thing is, I heard a lot of folks talking about cresteds, right? Of how there's a bunch of morphs showing up in cresteds now, and they're super cool cresteds and all this stuff. It's like, well, that's not true, because we know that there were a very finite number of cresteds that came in. Those genetics have been there all the time. It just took this long for those grandkids to finally mate and for that baby to pop out. And so if scaleless ball pythons, how many 80,000 a year for 20 years did we import, and in whichever part of Benin or Togo or whatever they came from, like if you showed up there, there'd probably be a guy that it'd be, oh yeah, Bob over there, he knows about those. Like, it's not weird if you're there, and then we just finally got those two 15th generation grandkids together and like, holy crap, look at this thing I invented. No, that's,
and that's literally what I was going to say is on the same exact note, like you said, ball pythons, I was going to say puff adder. So I'm pretty sure the first puff adder that was found scaleless was like in the 60s or something, and they brought it into captivity. And then it took probably 15 or 20 years. We don't know if they were trying to breed for it, but in like 15, 20 years later, they produced a litter of that. Some of them in the litter were scaleless, and those are the ones that became the founders for the scaleless puff adders that are out there. So going back to what we're saying is it's probably something that's been going on forever, but nature eats them. Nature, weeds them out, whatever, because it's not correct. It's not conducive to surviving.
We don't hoard it and sell it for thousands of dollars.
And that's the thing is now we're coveting them, right?
Yeah.
And because it's popular to covet them is why we're seeing more species that share the pattern, right?
I'm with Mike. It was aliens.
Yeah, thanks.
I don't know. I'm full disclosure, if you haven't figured this out already, I'm a complete idiot when it comes to most genetic stuff. So,
welcome to the club, bro.
Dude, there's tons of stuff like that, though. I mean, look at berms. Like almost all of the berm morphs that we have came from wild animals. When you talk about like the granite berm, there's a super famous picture of a tanned skin of a humongous berm in country. It's granite. It's not a berm, it's granite. And then you talk about like a green berm or something like that. It's like, oh, you mean humans cut down all your forests and the water got really murky, sort of like South America, and then your giant snake developed green like anacondas in the murky water? Weird.
Yeah, shocking.
Or the yellow ones where they got a lot of yellow silt, so yellow anacondas exist, and all of a sudden your really fat snakes are doing the same thing because we crapped in your water and it turned yellow. Oops. Like, yeah, I mean, it's just that somebody cared. Bob Clark was like, I could sell that to the Saudis for $1 million. Give me a yellow one. Like, all right, cool, I will.
Yeah, what wasn't the first bat-eater wild caught?
Ooh, that one I don't know.
I think it
not surprise me.
Yeah, I think it was. Talk about a snake that would get eaten easily. Man, very interesting. And you said you were almost out of material. Come on, Bill.
Out of things I have pictures of.
Reach up in that beard and pull out more information because we know it's hiding in there.
Yeah, I know, right?
That's where he keeps all his secrets.
Was there any other words that you thought of or slang words that you thought of, Bill? That we don't need pictures for? I mean, we talked about a lot of snake stuff, and I'm glad that you brought the lizard game as you so often do.
The lizard brain at work.
Yeah, no, literally. I was literally just sitting talking to Teresa, and actually, that is something I commented that earlier, and Teresa was saying that she was making fun of Phil, and when she was like, everything that he just said sounds like made up words. You were describing where perps come from in that part of the world, and Straits of Malacca and different things. And it's not necessarily, I mean, those are terms, those are actual like factual terms, they're not slang, but it's we just kind of breeze through that and assume that you knew that we were talking about Tremercerus, and you knew that was a genus, and you knew that Tremercerus meant little vipers that sit on trees, and we just assumed that where the Straits of Malacca are.
It's a good point. It's a good point.
I missed the days where Trimeresurus was just Trimeresurus.
Oh, but that's it's not slang. It's just there's a pretty high base level of knowledge to hang out and talk about venomous snakes by their Latin names. Like that takes a higher base level, I guess, to not just be sitting. And I do quite a bit, hang out in the chat and just Google stuff. But like just because I actually commented that about the gecko because I guessed the gecko wrong. But I was like, I was in Namibia, and I guessed one species that was from the Sahel. Like I should have been close for Phil. But like, if you didn't know what the Sahel or Namibia or like. That's not helpful to you. Those aren't slang terms, but that's still not helpful to you in the conversation if you didn't know those terms.
Sure. And the problem is that like the question at hand was, what's a perp, right?
Right.
Simple definition would have been it's the shortened species name of a tree going
demon.
It's of a tree going marsh viper from Southeast Asia. Oh, we lost him. See if he's coming back. There he is. I got him. Oh, there he is.
Nobody cares about perps. That's why I got off.
Oh.
No, I hit the back button too many times.
No, it's cool, man. And see, what I was saying is that it would have been easy just to say it's the shortened species name of a tree viper from Southeast Asia. And I went a little too far with it, and then that opened up a whole can of worms.
Well, but that's the thing is the definition of the slang term is this is just a shortened name for a specific species of snake.
Sure.
And because you guys know that, and it's intimate knowledge for you, you gave a ton of information about the species of snake that word is short for. And so it's just one of those things where like you would need to know a lot about Southeast Asia to know all of that.
You got a point. You got a point.
There were probably a lot of people in the chat that were like, purple snake, cool.
Yeah.
What about mucks? What?
Yeah.
Straight?
Yeah.
Like,
Sumatra? What's Sumatra?
Yeah.
The coffee?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that, start talking about Burma and Myanmar and, lesser sundas and all kinds of things. And you could lose people pretty quick.
I lose myself sometimes. Yeah. Yeah, definitely, man. We should do another one of these in the new year and really put some pen to paper on some of these. Oh, he needs to stop pressing the back button. Look what he did. Come on, Bill.
Inside me say, I really don't think you're strong enough now.
You don't have to wait for me. I just keep hitting the stupid button trying to look at the comments. No, you don't. Teresa's over here laughing at me, and I'm telling her that the comments are talking about her, making fun of Phil, talking about Sumatra.
What I was gonna say is Valentine says to have her come on, join the fun. Get in there, girl.
I just got
there. She is.
Can you hear the cackling through YouTube?
Get her on there. How about this? She doesn't have to. She doesn't have to come on camera. She can just come close enough so we can hear her, like, for real.
I've taken my hair out. I am done for the day.
Yeah, she's taking her hair out. It's not an option.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. I tried.
I didn't know that mattered for voice work, but it matters.
Yeah, exactly.
He said, come on the camera, not voice work.
He said, you don't have to.
Yeah, just
run away. It's fine. Run away.
Sit next to him so that you can use the mic, and we'll all be missing out on your beautiful appearance.
Peer pressure is a bitch.
Thanks.
Yeah, I do have to live here, man.
That's true. Yeah, Kasiki says your wife is infamous.
Yeah, a little bit.
Love it. How's the turtle zoo coming along, by the way?
Which part?
Did you say that your son was basically turning the entire basement into a turtle sanctuary?
Oh man, yeah, no,
yeah, with the exception of your giant enclosure for the iguana.
Ridiculous.
Turtle world.
Update to giant iguana enclosure is a potential. I had a different thought process on that, to where I have a 300-gallon racetrack as the base currently, and I want to put, and that has 2-ish feet of substrate, which probably has another 18 inches that I could put in there. And what I want to do is put I think it's a 65, it might be an 80-gallon racetrack inside of that.
Nice.
Fill the remaining substrate around that racetrack. And slang term, That means an
Yeah.
oval trough.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
an oval, literally racetrack shaped trough.
Yes.
And my thought process currently, originally I wanted to use that as a water feature for the redfoots, and then the
Yeah.
iguanas would be above that. My current thought process, because it's in the basement, so it's away from people, is I may use that water feature for my yellow anaconda, and then have the upper portion of that be dedicated to the 2 red tails. And so that would just be South American snakes instead of the iguana and the redfoot.
That'd be awesome.
The boas are cool. The yellow is a yellow. It's not a fan of people. It'll sit
Yeah.
out in the water because it thinks that you can't see it, but it's not a fan. So I thought being in the basement would give it a little more privacy.
Sure. I think it's a great idea. Were you considering doing some kind of plexi or something against the mesh to limit, nose rub and stuff?
So that enclosure is that's fully encapsulated using the shower wall stuff, the white shower walls.
Oh, okay.
And then the doors are 4x3 maybe plexi.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
So yeah.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, I think the last picture I saw was before you had the actual walls up. So
yeah. So that one is actually done. We just need to do the water feature because we were trying to pick who we wanted to put down there, and then that's planted with Christmas and Thanksgiving cactus, which are actually an epiphytic plant from South America.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I love Christmas cactus.
The reason that those are such a big deal is because they're a mountain plant and they can get cold, and they're epiphytic, so their roots and stuff. Basically, you can treat it like crap in the wintertime when you're not paying attention at Christmas, and it'll still flower. Yeah. And so, I was screwing around Googling that and found that out, and they're South American, so I bought a ton of them to put in that enclosure.
Nice. And I love Christmas cactus because they're hardy, like you were saying, and they're very aesthetically pleasing, and they're not going to injure the animal whatsoever, Right.
Yeah. Very, very thin leafed, very, very benign.
And let me ask you, did the green iguana eat any of the flowers?
He has not been exposed to it when it was flowering. He pretty much ignored the greenery, and I did not put them on the ground because the redfoot will eat anything. Oh yeah, destroy it. That can't happen. Yeah. I had a beautiful. I bought an ungodly number of ferns that cost way too much money at one time, and had a Jurassic Park set up for a redfoot, and he ate all of them in 2 weeks.
Oh,
so
jeez.
Every single one of them down to the dirt. Yeah, they are.
And let me ask you on the troughs, are you doing a pipe and sump, or are you doing like an in-tank pond filter?
All the stuff right now has the pond boxes.
Yeah.
Currently, I have done the pipe to a jet filter, big reef tank style type of thing. Yeah. I don't right now. I'm trying to work out something. I think I might do a refugium version of that, which for people that don't know, that is a tank that would sit outside of the enclosure itself and have filter media and maybe some plant material or a cleanup crew type of thing. Very similar to a lot of saltwater tanks that do that for nutrient cleanup. So my thought was I may go the refugium route for the gators in the future because they eat so much and create so much waste that the pond filter keeps up with them right now, but they're both right about the 3 foot 40-inch mark or so. So it's a lot of waste, but not nearly as much as 2 6-footers. And so I think the refugium is going to be the test out for them.
Yeah, because I was going to say the refugium would probably be a great idea. The only thing you have to consider is I don't want to say I guess it's not. Yeah, the intake would get stopped with waste.
Yeah.
That's the only issue.
Once the waste is big enough, it's you still have to do some netting.
Skimming.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. That's cool.
Yeah. And then it's just building the black boxes right now.
Yeah. BlackBoxCages.com.
BlackBoxCages.com.
They are built, they are done, they are lit. I have a few things left to dry, and there'll be lizards in them this week.
Excellent. What are they getting?
So I have 4 of the Bio 36s, which are 3x3x18. And then all 4 will be species from Madagascar. So there's two that are not quite tropical, more forest type, and then 2 that are very arid. And so there is one for Boivini, the big velvet geckos. There is one for a Peruidura oviceps female, which is a very small lizard in a very big box.
Worth it. Totally worth it.
Yeah. The one of the arids is a Pleuris grandidieri, and the other is a group of a Pleuris cuvieri.
Very cool. What's a cuvieri look like?
They are they're like most of Pleuris. They're actually one of the few of Pleuris. They're not the flat rocks. They're like they look sort of like our Tenosaura, little ones, and they're black and white banded. And they're cool because they're one of the ones, they're very visual, and they'll work with birds in Madagascar to alert each other. And so currently the way I have them set up is I took pieces of a cherry tree that I cut down, and I just made like a little fake forest, and they climb up on that thing and they'll watch you and bob to each other and talk. They're one of the few iguanids that's not crested. And so they do all the same things. They just don't have any of the facial structure to add to it. So they're very visual. So their new setup is 2 different rock piles with a cork tube in the center, so that my hope is that they'll talk between their rock piles.
Nice.
They currently talk between their trees, so I think I can mimic the same thing. And then the grandidieri are really similar to a lot of flat rock lizard species. They just happen to be found in Madagascar, and they have a lot of red. The males very redheaded, like agamids. And so that one is a lot of very flat rocks with the red background, so he can just blend in and we'll never see him again. It's pretty much what's going to happen. Good.
Did you ever keep Platysaurus?
I have not.
Man, I feel like Platysaurus is right up your alley, man. I had Imperator, and I had, now I can't remember their species, but Imperator are the biggest ones, and they're.
Teresa's making fun of you again for using big words.
Oh, come on, girl. Talking about flat rock lizards.
Talking about dinosaurs.
Yeah, dinosaurs. I think you would totally get a kick out of Platysaurus, and they're relatively inexpensive when they're imported. And I had captives, and if you did the Bill Bradley thing and set them up right and left them alone, they did so well. And,
well, don't worry, man, because the next phase of the Bradley thing is the 2. So I have my rhino iguana is in it's an 8x4 floor, and then it's got whatever, and I doubled that up, and the second level is split in half, and that's currently the 2 Pleuris squares, which is that like 4x4x3 maybe, or 4. Which is super overkill for those. And so when I wanted to transfer those to the BlackBox, just so I could get better visuals when I teach people and better for pictures and stuff. But those 2 squares are above the rhinoceros iguana. So one of them is very, very warm, and the other is just a little bit warmer than room temperature. And so it's going to be a Brettles and a Hog Island to show 2 rock dwelling species, a python and a boa. And then we'll have a really warm one with sand and a really sort of warmish one that gets kind of cold with the red rock for the Brettles to sit on.
Hell yeah, dude.
That's the next phase.
That's awesome.
And a million other things.
Hell yeah. That's great. Well, boys, we're at 2:45. Is there anything you boys want to touch base on?
Nah.
Ooh, I have decided on a Lizard Brain Radio Person of the Year when we do our show. I will have input.
Excellent.
And my input fits my weird niche in herpetoculture of education and rescues is the person that I chose.
Hell yeah.
Sweet.
And
lizards.
Can't wait.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good one. I'm looking forward to it.
It's gonna be a fun show.
Yeah.
So.
This episode was brought to you by BlackBoxCages.com. Check them out. Facebook, Instagram. Get your hands on a cage, a rack. Pick your poison. Whatever you choose, the quality is going to be ridiculously good.
They're
And
awesome.
Ridiculous.
I love every single one of my racks and cages from them. So check them out. Oh, what happened?
He fell
Oh,
over.
he got abducted.
He did. Kasiki's aliens kidnapped him.
Yep, they got him.
They got him.
So BlackBox cages, check them out. And Puget Sound Pythons, the fine folks of the Pacific Northwest. Jeff
Kendra.
and Kendra. Very good people. I
Very.
feel like they've been busy lately. I haven't heard from them much.
Yeah, they
Need to hit them up.
real busy.
Busy planning weddings and stuff, man.
I know, right?
So we'll be back for THP on Thursday. We are doing a one-on-one, kind of just a year in review thing for me and Jake. And I don't know if that'll necessarily be a longer episode, and haven't really decided yet. Got to get some other stuff together in terms of what we're going to talk about. So that'll be good. So
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, everyone, for sticking around and listening to our herp slang. We'll catch you later.
See ya.
Bye.